A man followed us to our Airbnb and tried to break in the night before a princess cruise.
Hi, we have a man trying to break into our Airbnb right now.
This happened a year ago now. I thought I would revisit that story, so forgive me, the details might be a little fuzzy. You might hear it told differently from someone else, and chances are if that happens, I maybe just remembered it wrong. I don't know. I'm gonna try my best. So some friends and I went up to New Hampshire. We were visiting, doing a little trip up there. We're also doing this princess cruise, and we were kind of making it like one whole big weekend. So anyway, we're in New Hampshire, and we're at this Airbnb. We get there really, really late. We've had a full day of travel. We are so tired because we're from Alabama. We've traveled all the way up there and we are exhausted. So we get in super late after being on a plane, driving, like so much has gone on. We're exhausted. We get out of the car and there's this man standing next to the car and we're like, I just met these girls that we're doing this princess cruise with. I don't know any of them. I'm assuming that it's this girl's husband or boyfriend. I thought she knew him with how close he was standing to us. So I'm kind of like, okay, get out of the car, go to the back. And then I noticed that the girl who brought us there, she's like, come on guys, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then I realized, oh, she doesn't know this guy. And then when we're about to be to our Airbnb door, I realized he's seeing exactly where we're walking into and he knows where we're gonna be staying. So this is not good. Little detail I forgot to mention was this Airbnb is in the middle of freaking nowhere. There is absolutely nothing around us. The cell reception was not great, and I'll get into that in a second. So we get in, we shut the door, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I don't know what happened from here until this next part, but we put our stuff down, figured out where we're sleeping in our rooms. We all go upstairs. The layout of the house is where you walk in, that's the middle floor, and it's a very small floor. It's basically just an entryway. Then you can go down the stairs. That's where two bedrooms are, the one I was staying in and another young girl was staying in, and then the bathroom. And then if you go in the front door and go up the stairs, that's where the main bedroom is, the kitchen is, the living room is, another bathroom, but that's all on like the top floor. So we're all on the top floor at this point, and we start hearing knocking.
Hi, we have a man trying to break into our Airbnb right now.
A man followed us to our Airbnb and tried to break in the night before a princess cruise.
Hi, we have a man trying to break into our Airbnb right now.
And we're like, what the heck? So one of the girls look out the door. Okay, this is all, I'm trying to remember this, okay? So some of these details might be wrong, okay? I'm trying so hard. I think one of the girls looked out the door and saw him and screamed like, oh my gosh, it's the guy, it's the guy. Like, picture this man, tall, huge man. Like, I mean, he was pretty big. Like, I'm talking, you look at him and he's coming at you, you might be a little scared, okay? Iron is on hot right there if we need to use it for some psycho reason.
Okay.
He's at the door and he's knocking. Then he starts banging. Basically, I'll sum up everything that kind of happened. We went and got knives, we got scissors. The scissors were broken in half, so one girl had one half, the other had the other, or the other girl had the other half. We were peeking out of the blinds, lights are turned off.
Hello? Hello?
Oh my gosh. Is it you losing service?
Yeah, I'm losing service or something.
We're on the phone with 911.
No, nothing is going through.
Except we're not, because 911 wasn't working. Yeah, it wouldn't freaking answer. It was ridiculous.
Yeah,
I called 3 different times. They picked up, hung up. Like,
I think it was losing service.
And then someone else randomly called me back. I tried to answer that and it wouldn't work either. We couldn't get through to anyone. Like, we literally were calling, call failed, over and over again. Finally got in touch. Can't remember who got in touch with 911 finally.
There's a male with a flashlight pounding on the door trying to get in and looking through the window. She's on the line for further.
Meanwhile, this man is banging on the front door. Y'all, I didn't know. I had never been in this place, never been in this state before, didn't know where I was. We're in the middle of nowhere, just got here. I'm tired. I've been traveling all day.
Approached us in the parking lot when we were getting out of our car, and then he he sat in his truck for a bit, watched where we went into, got out of his truck, followed us over here.
A man followed us to our Airbnb and tried to break in the night before a princess cruise.
There's a male with a flashlight pounding on the door trying to get in and looking through the window. She's on the line for further.
This man is just banging on the door and we're all freaking out, literally thinking we're gonna die. There's 5 of us at this point in this Airbnb, 5 girls alone in the middle of nowhere at this Airbnb with this man banging on the freaking door.
He turned his flashlight off. It's so dark. I think he's hiding. I think he's waiting for like one of us to try to come out or something.
We're just like, send a car, something, like we need a cop here, like ASAP. And then I at one point yelled, I tried to do like the deepest man voice I could, and I just like yelled, get that F away from us, or get that F out of here, or something. I can't remember. Just yelled it. At one point he walked away from the door, walked to the side of the house.
He's close. I know he's here. Oh, I see him. I see him. I see him. He's over there. Look, there he is. There he is. He's coming back.
And then came back and just, he would just stand there and we could see him from the top floor. We could see down at the door, and see him just standing there.
He's actually like right by our condo. He's like in this little hallway area. And he is hiding and he is.
I actually do have some footage of all of this, which I'll insert, you know, in random places. But so then the man leaves. He gets in his car and he leaves. And we're like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Where is he going? And so he leaves down the road, down this dirt road, mind you. We're literally in the middle of nowhere. So he goes down the dirt road and he leaves. He turns right out. We can't see him anymore. And we're like, I don't know if at this point if we're on the phone with 911 or what, but we're just like, what do we do? What do we do?
He just got in his truck and he's pulling out. He is having trouble getting out, but he is like getting out of the parking lot now.
Understood, okay.
He's pulling out and he's going to the right towards the other condos.
Of course he is. And so we're just waiting. Then we see lights come down the dirt road again and we're like, oh my gosh, he's back, he's back. A man followed us to our Airbnb and tried to break in the night before a princess cruise.
He just got in his truck and he's pulling out. He is having trouble getting out, but he is like getting out of the parking lot now.
Understood, okay.
He's pulling out and he's going to the right towards the other condos.
Of course he is. And so we're just waiting. Then we see lights come down the dirt road again and we're like, oh my gosh, he's back, he's back. He pulls up and then another car comes behind him and we realize it's him and a sheriff.
Here, I want to know.
Breaking in her, he's probably making a fool of himself out there. He's probably on drugs. He's gonna tell.
And we're like I feel like that was when we felt like we could breathe a sigh of relief because we were like, finally, someone has found him. So come to find out, the sheriff was sitting like at a random spot that he normally doesn't sit at, and he saw this car. I think it was a truck, maybe. He saw it and matched the description of what they had put out for this guy. The sheriff saw it and said, kind of suspicious, I'm gonna follow him. He followed him back to our Airbnb. The guy was coming back to us. And so the sheriff got out of the car, they were talking. We're in the Airbnb, we can't hear any of this, they're a little bit further away. I think a cop came up at this point, so the cop is with the guy and the sheriff comes over the door, he talks to us, explains what happened, and explains that this guy is like, he's out of it. It was very, honestly, traumatizing. And the man was arrested. We found out that he was actually staying at the place that we were at, like a few doors down. On this dirt road, and there's this like apartment housing type places, but different cabins almost. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just really crazy and traumatizing. And I still can't believe I literally have videos of me, like I literally have a knife like ready. Like I have never in my life thought like that kind of thing could happen, but all I knew was I was just ready to protect the girls I was with. Like we were just like, oh my gosh, we're just here to like be princesses for these like little kids, and then this is happening. Like absolutely insane.
This girl emailed me and told me that she thinks that she met Satan after getting into a fight with her significant other. The story is so crazy. It's one of those stories that you have to listen to the end because the end is the craziest part. So we're going to call this girl Kate for the story. So Kate lived with her significant other at this time, and one day her and her significant other get into this giant fight, and because they got into this fight, she decides that she's going to go stay at her family's house. So after she gets off of work, she goes to her family's house. Now she is absolutely exhausted at this point. She gets into bed and she's just lying in bed. This is around 11 p.m. She's just scrolling on her phone when suddenly she sees something out of the corner of of her eye. And she said that it looked like someone passed her door and went into her sister's room. At first, she thinks that it's her sister, logically so, but she calls out to her and there's no response. So at this point, she sits up because she wants to see if she can see her sister in her room or if her light's on. And so she sits up and she looks towards that area and she sees something standing by the door, and it is pushing the door open. Now, she said that it was dark, so she couldn't really see this thing very clearly, but she could see that it was about the height of her sister. But she can tell that this is not her sister. So as it's pushing the door open more and more, she starts to see its form more, and it doesn't look like a person. It's just like a white shape of a person. Now, she said that although this thing was white, it did not give off a good feeling at all. She said that something felt very wrong, and as she's sitting there, this thing is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then boom, she's in a dream all of a sudden. Dreams that she's in a forest on a snowy island being chased by a pack of black wolves that are being led with a white wolf that has blood covering its face. While she's being chased by these wolves, she has this innate feeling that she needs to get to shelter immediately or something terrible is going to happen. And then suddenly she sees this castle in the distance. Now, this castle looked very run down. It was even burnt in some places. So she gets to the castle and she's very worried that these wolves are going to follow her inside of the castle and try to hurt her indefinitely, but she said that the doors just open at that point, and so she goes into the castle and then they just close right before the wolves can get in. She starts walking down this long entry hallway when suddenly, boom, she blacks out. Then she wakes up again and she's in this six-sided stone room. She said that this room was very small. It was about the width of a closet and it had no windows. She said that the only light that was coming in was from the roofless top. She said that it was about 30 to 40 feet high, and she said that where the roof should have been, there was some sort of like tower or prison. Just said that it was raining, and when she looked up, she just saw this dark, cloudy sky. Then suddenly a man appears, and he's in all white, and she said that he was extremely handsome and tall, but she couldn't really tell his age. She said she genuinely thought that he could have been like 20 or 1,000 years old. She genuinely did not know. The weird thing was, is he was wearing an all-white suit and a tie, but he wasn't getting wet. He was just standing there smiling at her, not saying anything. He's just creepily smiling at her. And although he was smiling, she said that she had the worst gut feeling. She said that looking at him looked like looking at hell itself. Something felt so terribly wrong. She even said that the evil aura that he was giving off was so strong that she felt like she wanted to crawl out of her skin. But he walks over to her, he picks her up, and boom, she blacks out again. One thing I did forget to mention is that in this whole instance, she's not dressed at all. So then after she blacks out, she wakes up and she's laying in a bed covered in soot, and she is soaking wet, still not dressed, and she just is like, what the is going on? And then she looks over to the side of the bed and she sees that man is sitting next to her, like some sort of sick, twisted caretaker. And again, he's just sitting there smiling at her. She said that she cannot express enough how terrible it was to look at him. She said that although he was handsome, again, think about, I can't use the exact verbiage that she used because it was so bad, but think about what happens in hell, or what you would think would happen there, and how bad that would be. She almost felt like she could feel that happening while she was looking at him. She said that this happened for a long time, him just sitting there smiling at her, and then he eventually gets up, he kisses her on the forehead, and then he just walks out of the room. Before he gets out of the room, he turns and looks at her and he says, I'll be back soon. He said that as soon as he walked out of the room, suddenly she's back in her bed, but her real bed, and she's sitting up watching a white figure walk out of her room. But here's the kicker. She's soaking wet, not dressed, and crying. She just starts screaming at this point because she is like, what the hell just happened? And no one is home, so no one comes to her aid. So she actually ends up calling her significant other at the time, her now ex, and is like, please come get me. She said that she would eventually go to her bishop, and that her bishop actually told her that he did think also that that is who that was. And she said that she didn't even need her or him to tell her that because she already felt that. She already knew. And here's the crazy part. She said that wasn't the last time that she saw him. Personally, I would like to know about the next time that you saw him, because that's terrifying. The whole story, I feel like, could be explained away as a dream. Like maybe you just fell asleep really quickly, even though you fell asleep like that. That's weird, right? But maybe, right? But you waking up wet and not dressed is crazy. That would scare me so badly. And then also watching that white figure walk out of your room, hell to the no. I did email her back. So if you're watching this right now, Kate, I know that's not your real name. I couldn't use your real name because you didn't tell me I could. Please write me another story if you feel comfortable telling me about your other experiences. And if anyone else wants to hear them, drop in the comments below. Otherwise, what do you guys think of the story? Do you think this was just a dream and maybe like she went outside and got undressed or she slept walk or something? Or do you think that she really did see something? I think she really did see something because not only was she wet and not dressed, but she also saw him walking out of the room. And the fact that he said, I will be back, and then he did come back and visit her, apparently, is also terrifying. Drop all your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions below in the comments, and as always, please be respectful.
This is one of the more disturbing listener submissions that I've gotten in a while for this series, and so you should use your discretion in deciding to listen to this because it does contain disturbing themes. But this story is called The Witch is Cursed, and it was submitted by someone named Tabitha, who said it was fine if I used her real name. And she's sending this in mostly to see if anyone can provide any intel about what she actually experienced at the age of 8 years old on a weekend retreat with her mother and Nana. They were invited to this retreat by her mom's boyfriend's coworker, and they were given a packing list and directions which led them to a large empty field. And immediately upon getting to this retreat, they were divided into 3 groups. Tabitha was put into a group called the Maidens, her mother was put into a group called the Mothers, and her Nana was put into a group called the Crones. Upon arriving, they were given different clothes to wear, and Tabitha's group was given white linen, her mother's was given red, and her Nana's group was given yellow. Now, here is where it gets disturbing, so forewarning. Tabitha was given a liquid that was like a tea. She said it tasted herbal, and soon after drinking it, she felt very groggy. She woke up a little bit later in a tent, and she had begun menstruating. She says she was extremely confused and embarrassed as this started happening because she was not regularly menstruating at that point, and she was wearing all white. An older maiden in her group sort of took Tabitha under her wing and told her it was okay and not to worry, and it was a normal part of life. But Tabitha was still very embarrassed, and she asked for either a new dress or something to clean herself off with, and she was given a cloth, but then that cloth was taken from her because she was told that it could attract predators. And Tabitha says from that point on, the rest of the weekend was extremely fuzzy. She remembers huge chunks of time missing. She fell into deep sleeps very often, but she remembers on the first night she woke up to chanting under the moon, and she saw a group of women burying something. While she doesn't remember the entire sequence of events, she does remember that there was eggs and bread left at an altar. She remembers the name of Hecate being chanted. She remembers seeing women that seemed entranced. Some of them danced. Some were entirely without clothing, and she remembers knives being thrust into what she believes was wine. She remembers one pregnant woman being rubbed down with oil and herbs as other women chanted around her. She says the second day was hazy, but she remembers sitting in a circle with some other of the maidens from her group, and one woman was leading a chanting circle, and some of them were performing binding rituals. She says she remembers feeling very uneasy and confused the whole time, but her mother and Nana, who she saw periodically, seemed to be enjoying it, almost entranced. This struck her as odd because this is not something that she thought that her mother would enjoy. Now, she says she has asked both her mother and her Nana about this weekend retreat since she's been an adult, but they're either not able to answer questions about it or they choose not to. She does know that they never heard from her mom's boyfriend's coworker again, and she actually stopped working with him shortly after this retreat. So she's writing to ask, what exactly did I experience? Does anyone know? She also shared that since this happened, she has had many chronic health issues involving her reproductive organs, along with other chronic health issues, most of which are unexplained. She also said that she struggles with sleep paralysis, and that in some of these sleep paralysis episodes, she has been visited by what she believes is a stone witch, as this entity explained to her. She has also seen this figure visit her during her experiences with pregnancy loss. She says, sometimes I wonder if this is related to what I experienced that weekend, and I'm still not even sure what I experienced. So if anyone has any insight for Tabitha, like I said, she's more so just looking for anyone who may know exactly what she was doing there or what this retreat was. Let her know. She didn't want to be tagged, but she will be seeing the comments.
The person that sent me this story called it, I survived a Category 5 hurricane in Florida, and I think a spirit got trapped. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hello, Anti-Matrix. Hi! I hope this finds you well. I love reading the stories you post as they make me feel validated. Yes! I love when the stories help somebody else feel valid in their experience. That is like the whole point of this. We believe you. Your shit did happen. Now, I've had odd and unexplainable crap happen to me my whole life as I grew up in Louisiana, but it never bothered me. But what happened to me in 2018 after Hurricane Michael almost killed me? What do you mean, friend? To preface this, I'm going to let you know that the amount of fatalities the media reported was not true. We lost so many more, and we know that. Here we go. Hurricane Michael hit us on October 10th, 2018, and quickly lost media coverage due to the fires in Calabasas. Now, I've never wished any harm on anyone, but I'm so glad Kim Kardashian had another home to take her family to. That was a blessing. This hurricane nearly wiped our county off the map and did wipe a small town called Mexico Beach off the map. They called it Ground Zero. My husband, myself, and our 7-year-old son at the time did not evacuate because our local media downplayed this hurricane tremendously. I'm not going to waste time describing it, but there are lots of YouTube videos if you ever want to check it out. It's what happened after that still haunts me. There was nothing left, so naturally we had to wait. We ended up at different families' houses, some out of state and one back in Florida, so we could work and volunteer for our community after the property was repaired. Fast forward to December 2018, and some apartments were thrown back together and we rented one. It was a roof, this emoji. When we moved in, obviously there was still some damage. I found insulation in the cabinets among some other things like disgusting, smelly water that spilled out of a light fixture when we tried to see if there was a bulb out because it wasn't working. So I know this place was hit hard. Anyway, after a few weeks of living there, I went downhill bad. I got so depressed that I couldn't hold the job I took, and I would randomly burst into tears out of nowhere. I went to doctors, had so many tests done. The therapist just said, it's expected after what we just experienced, so I listened. But it just got worse and worse. As long as I wasn't in the apartment, I was fine. My mood lifted and I was happy, but every time I returned, the moment I stepped into the door, all I could feel was despair and sadness. Fast forward a couple of months and I started to get calls from the rental company saying that they were getting noise complaints from the neighbor saying that we were running through our apartment in the middle of the night. I promise you we weren't. My son has autism and my house shut down at 8:30 p.m. and I dare anyone to wake my son and see what happens. I don't mess around about my kid's mental health. Then a few weeks after that, I've been woken up by screaming. Not a regular scream, gut-wrenching, crying, begging screams. At first, I thought maybe I was coming out of a night terror as I've had them all my life, and I still do. After weeks of this, I decided to see where they were coming from. The back of the apartment between rooms was nothing but closets. Our room, the left, my son's to the right. A small one at the end of the hall, and a walk-in to the left as soon as you entered my son's room, and a small walk-in in the back of our room. That's where it was coming from. The more time went on, the louder it got. I literally couldn't sleep. Now, I'm no genius, but where would you hide during a hurricane in this place? I'd go to that walk-in closet away from the windows. No one else heard it, by the way, just me. It wasn't just one scream either. I heard an adult woman and maybe a couple of children. There was no other space but closets between those rooms. Why are the screams coming from the walls? We constantly got complaints from our neighbor about the running, even though we invited her in middle of the night to show her that everyone was asleep. They were very nice and we took care of each other because neither one of us had much of a support system. We were both so confused. Neither one of my animals were big enough to make that much noise. My mental and physical health declined so bad after the next few months that I literally became bedridden. If I ate, I would get so sick that I, couldn't keep it down. My hair started to fall out. I was in so much pain that I couldn't move. I was 95 pounds when we got the call about a year later that our original home was fixed and we could return. 1 month after leaving this apartment, I was back to normal. Eating, gained my weight back to 120 pounds, happy and no longer feeling despair. I thought for sure returning to the place it happened would be harder, but it was a relief. When I tell this story, I just get looks or a rational explanation like, this was all mental because of what you went through. I don't think so. I believe someone died in this apartment and their poor spirit was desperately trying to get out, or maybe I'm just crazy. What happened to me there? I've experienced other trauma and never went downhill like this before. Thanks for listening. If you ever get to read this, thanks for the amazing content. The end! Oh my God, this was first of all, I want to say we believe you. I do not think it was just stress of the situation or because of what you went through. I do not think it was a mental thing at all. Because you're right, if it was like a mental stress thing, bringing you back to the place where it happened originally, where you were when the storm was hitting, would be the thing that would like trigger the stress. It wouldn't be like being in another place. And the simple fact that your neighbors were complaining because people were running around in your apartment and you were hearing literal screams of not just one person, but children also coming from a closet. Clearly, I agree with your explanation. I think absolutely some people died in that apartment, probably mom, children, which is so fucking sad to even say or think about, died in that apartment back there. And they're definitely stuck. I don't know if they're stuck. Maybe the running and the screaming. It's weird because you said you didn't hear the running. You only heard the screaming, and the neighbor heard the running, but not the screaming, which was very interesting that you weren't also hearing the running. But I feel like maybe it was like the running and the screaming. It was like a death echo situation. And the running and the screaming was like them experiencing trying to like run around and hide from the storm and then like screaming for help on repeat. That could potentially be it. But the fact that you got so sick and depressed, like there was definitely that situation and the deaths in that home, I'm assuming happened. I'm just going with it. That's what happened. Brought so much bad energy that it somehow, I don't know how it somehow latched onto you. And you took the brunt of it and you got sick and you lost your hair and you lost the weight and you couldn't get out of bed. I always wonder why something would attach to one person and not the other. Maybe you were just the most mentally or emotionally weak at the time because of the stress, and that's what allowed it to like attach to you or allowed it to affect you in that crazy way. But the fact that when you left, you were fine, 100% it had to do with that place. 100% something was happening. That's what I think. I want to hear what you guys think in the comments, please. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
What is the weirdest things you've experienced for listening to your intuition? I'm reading the comments you left in my video. When I was early in my addiction, I met Robert Pickton's serial killer. He was so creepy. Anyways, he asked me to go to a party with him, and obviously I said no. It wasn't until I was in recovery that I realized who I met. I also have a friend that escaped from him but didn't get justice because the cops chose not to listen to her. And of course, I'm so nosy, I had to look this up. Robert William Pickton, also known as the Pig Farmer Killer or the Butcher, was a Canadian pig farmer and serial killer. He is believed to have murdered at least 26 women, many of them SC ex-workers from Vancouver's downtown east side. He confessed to 49 murders. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you said no, cause what the I used to live in northeast of Scotland. One day I decided to go out for a walk. It was mid-afternoon and I came onto a street. All of a sudden, I had a weird feeling something was telling me to turn around and not go down the street. So I turned around and walked back where I came from. Later that day, I found out somebody was stabbed right on the street that the instinct told me not to go down to. My aunt who passed away came to my mind and told me to check on my baby at the time in his crib. So I went to go check on him, and the blanket was covering his little face. After I took the blanket off and walked out of the room, I saw my aunt's ring on the floor. I had a dream of me holding a baby boy, and I woke up from ugly crying in my dreams. We had been trying to have a baby for years, and 4 months later, I found out I was already 4 months pregnant with a boy. The first story reminds me of the story that my dad tells me every time. He dreamt of my grandma I never met when I was a baby. She told him, "Wake up, your daughter needs you." I was around 1 month old and almost died because I threw up. My grandma saved me. God, that's so sweet. I dreamt my baby wasn't able to breathe. I woke up and my husband had his arm across my baby's face. After that, I kept my baby in her crib. I was 6 months pregnant with our firstborn with dreams of this beautiful baby boy. We did not want to know the sex of the child. My ex-husband had 7 brothers and me 6 sisters. When I delivered, he was the baby in my dreams. I literally cried tears of joy. My mom and grandmother told me in a dream to go to the hospital, and I did, only to find out I had a brain tumor that was about to unalive me if I didn't get taken care of immediately. I was 2 days away from having an acute aneurysm. Oh my God.
In 2022, a crab fisherman claimed something shaped like a human followed his boat for nearly 4 miles through the Bering Sea. And every time that he looked away from the water, it would call out to him. So this story was sent to me by a man who I'm going to call Roman. And he said that this happened during a winter crabbing season off the coast of Alaska. And I obviously have no way of verifying anything that he told me or the picture that was submitted. So take this as pure entertainment as always, and you can decide for yourselves. But Roman insists that whatever followed their boat that night was not a seal, a whale, or any other animal that he had encountered during his 15 years out at sea. And at the time, Roman worked aboard a commercial crab boat operating out of Dutch Harbor. And the work was brutal, especially at night. The decks always froze quickly, and the wind cut through every layer of clothing, and the crew often worked for hours without stopping. So exhaustion and all that definitely could have played a part. But on this one night, shortly after 2 a.m, the boat was moving between strings of crab pots. Most of the crew had gone below deck to eat and warm up, but Roman remained outside to secure several lines near the stern with another worker. And the sea was unusually calm that night. There was barely any wind, and the only sounds were the diesel engines and the water breaking against the boat. And that was when Roman heard this whistle out in the open, and it was a short, rising call, 2 soft notes coming from somewhere behind him. Roman would turn around, expecting to see one of the other crew members maybe standing nearby, whatever, but no one was there. And then he heard it again, and only this time it came from the water. And at first, Roman assumed it was maybe a seabird. Certain birds can make that surprising human whistle sound, or exhaustion can definitely do strange things to a person's mind and senses. And he leaned over the railing and he searched the wake, and nothing. And for about 40 yards behind the boat, something dark broke the surface, and Roman initially thought it was maybe a seal. He could see what looked like a rounded head and 2 black eyes reflecting in the stern lights. But as the boat continued forward, more of the object rose above the water, and Roman said it looked like it had shoulders, not fins or a curved back, like actually narrow shoulders with what appeared to be a neck between them. The upper portion of its body remained perfectly vertical as its body was bobbing there, or then horizontal as it moved through the water. It wasn't swimming like an animal. There was no splashing and no movement from its arms, assuming those were arms hanging beside it, he said, and it simply just followed behind him. And Roman watched it for several seconds before grabbing a handheld spotlight, and the moment that he pointed the beam toward it, the figure disappeared beneath the surface. And he stood there in disbelief for a minute, what the hell did I just see? And he was searching the water and everything, but he was trying to convince himself that he had, maybe misidentified a seal. Then the whistle came from the boat's port side, and whatever, it had crossed the distance underwater without Roman seeing it. It had to have moved like that. The figure then surfaced again, and this time it was much closer. He could only see its head this time, but he said it appeared very pale, more pale than a seal, and its face almost looked flat with dark areas where its eyes would have been. And he, looked like an opened mouth, and then that same note came out again. But hearing it up close made Roman realize it wasn't really a whistle, and beneath the higher sound was something rough and strained, almost like a person attempting to call out for help without actually knowing how to form the words, like mimicking almost. And he radioed the wheelhouse and asked the captain to check the stern camera, and he didn't describe what he was actually seeing because he was afraid that the other men would think, exhaustion, or, he's going a little cuckoo or whatever. And the captain checked, and he said he couldn't see anything except the wake. Roman looked back, and the figure was still there. And for this, for the next several miles, it followed the boat very, very closely. And sometimes it vanished for a minute or two, but the call always returned from a different position, and once from the port side, then starboard side, then directly behind him. And it seemed to understand that the sound made him would turn around, and he was reacting to it. So eventually another deckhand named Mason that was out there, Roman had asked him to stand near the stern and listen for a second, and for almost a minute there was nothing. Then that call came again, and Mason immediately looked toward the water. And he's like, who's there? Who the F is that? Whatever. And, that question terrified Roman more than the sound itself, because it meant he wasn't imagining it, right? Somebody else had heard it now. And Roman aimed the spotlight into the darkness, and for less than a second, both of the men saw something rise out of the wake. And Mason later described it as a person that was treading water, which was a good description of it, he said. And Roman said it also looked it looked longer and thinner than any person really should have been, with its head held unnaturally still while the rest of its body just moved beneath the surface. He said it was very hard to describe it, and the figure dropped underwater as soon as the light touched it. Mason wanted the captain to stop the boat immediately, believing someone maybe had fallen overboard or there was somebody out there that needed help from another vessel. Roman refused, and they hadn't passed another boat for hours, and the water was cold enough to incapacitate an unprotected person within minutes, and a distress call probably would have gone out too. So whatever was following them had already remained in it for nearly a half an hour at this point, right? The captain came down to inspect the water himself. The moment that he stepped onto the deck, the calling stopped. They never saw the figure again that night, but he did supposedly manage to capture a picture of it when he was out there with Mason. And when they reached Dutch Harbor several days later, Mason told Roman that it had probably been a seal, maybe distorted by the darkness, exhaustion, and the movement of the waves. Roman wanted to believe that explanation, which to this day, it definitely still is possible. And then they reviewed the boat's navigation records, and according to that GPS, the figure had begun following them sometime near their first crab pot and disappeared shortly before they reached the next string. A distance of just under 4 miles, but keeping up with them, right? So Roman also checked to see the stern camera recording, and just as the captain had said, the footage showed absolutely nothing, and there was nobody there in the water. But the microphone had captured the calls, supposedly. The first few sounded distant and could easily have belonged to a bird, sure. And as the recording continued, however, the sound became louder and increasingly more human-like, he said. And near the end, while Roman and Mason were leaning over the railing, the microphone recorded one final call from directly beneath the cameras. And this one didn't sound like a whistle, he said. It sounded more like a woman quietly calling out for help to them. So Roman left commercial fishing just 2 seasons later due to an injury, he said. He does admit that exhaustion, darkness, being away from family, and the fear that, this may have caused him all to, maybe see something that really wasn't there, So there were a lot of reasons why he left. But maybe it was only a seal following their boat that, trailing after their bait, maybe. Maybe everything was a combination of the machinery and the lighting and the waves and another animal. Sure, yeah, absolutely. But Roman said there is one reason that he can't accept any of that explanation, and it's whatever was following them that night never called when nobody was standing near the railing. It only made a sound when Roman was alone and when him and Mason were alone. And it always waited until they had their backs turned. So let me know what you guys think in the comments.
The owner of this photo explains this was taken during our parents' 50th anniversary celebration with the whole family. The strangest part is that we have no idea who the person is standing in the back row on the right. I took this photo inside my house when I was packing a few things to move to a storage unit. My house has always had paranormal activity. I would constantly hear noises, doors would slam on their own, lights would turn on and off, and things like that. I've never actually captured anything until I took this photo. It looks like a dark black shadow, which makes me wonder if it's a malicious entity. A friend of mine works in a clinic and helped install this plasma TV on the wall. After the installation, he was taking photos to send to the manager. But when he looked back at the photos, he noticed this figure reflected off of the TV. According to him, he was completely alone. This is an old family photo belonging to one of my close friends. It was taken in a church during a wedding. In the background, however, you can see something that doesn't look like it's alive, and it seems to be staring pretty heavily at the people in the photo. They've never been able to figure out what it is, but it does feel malicious.
I think I may have slept with a ghost or some witch. I have a motto, a personal one. I love riding at night because it's refreshing. I do that to relax. I will be honest, giving ladies lifts at night on a motorcycle is a hobby. They like it, and my motto is a very big one. Those who are familiar with motorcycles know the Yamaha R1 is some sort of beast. When you pick a lady behind it, the speed, the noise, and maneuvering through cars scares them, but they love it. They cling to you like a baby. The feeling is nice, and through that, they fell in love with you instantly. I take most of their numbers. Some even ask for mine. During texting, they'll be preaching safety and the way I speed and all that, but they love it and it normally ends in the bedroom. I can't count how many ladies this motto has brought to my bed, but I just know there are many. 9 to 10 ladies I give lift end up in my bed. So before I even offer to give you a lift, you are my spec. I've been doing this for about 3 years now. It was around last 2 months. I saw this light-skinned lady walking alone around the motorway. It was around 9 p.m. I stopped to give her a lift, but she said she ordered a ride. I insisted, and she got behind me. As usual, I sped off, overtaking vehicles and even performing a few stunts. That is stoppy, wheelie, burnout, etc. And spoke all night. The next day, I went to pick her around the same place we met. To my end, and we had sex. She left, and that was it. I've never heard from her, and her number doesn't always go through. Just that every night after the day I slept with her, I always see myself in a coffin at a cemetery when I sleep. I mean, every single night. Because of that, I have not touched my motor since. I was hoping it would stop, but even last night, I had the same dream. Every night, I'm in a coffin and people are forcing me to the ground. Same dream, same place, and same everything every night. One dream continues for months. It's not normal and I fear something will happen to me. I'm really sad and I've been thinking a lot. I don't know juju stuff, but help me get someone to help me before it's too late. I beg. What do you guys think about this story? Maybe I got the story from Love and Pills, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
If you're afraid of spiders, then I got bad news for you. This is considered peak spider season because right now is when the male spiders are looking for a mate. So between August and October is when spiders are the most active. And that's why you will notice spiders running across your floor, on your walls, in your showers, or in your bed, because the male spiders are essentially looking for a mate. Now, I heard a very terrifying story out of Texas. There was this young man named Jake. Jake and his friends were camping in Hill Country, Texas, just outside of San Antonio. And their second night camping, he said they had hiked 8 miles that day, and they were completely exhausted. So the only campsite that they could find was this area that was completely infested with spiders. So there were spiders all over the ground, on the trees, everywhere. So even though he was afraid and terrified of spiders, he managed to find a spot where he thought it would be okay to set up his tent. So he said he got his tent set up and he went to bed and he began to have these dreams. And he said in his dream, there were all these spiders just all over him. And he was just shaking them off and shaking them off, but they kept crawling on him. He said he awoke and he first, looked at the front of his body because he thought these spiders were on him. And he said he didn't see any spiders. But that's when he noticed he felt this strange sensation on his hair, on his head. He said it just felt like something was moving. So he put his hand back through his hair and he realized his hair was completely covered with spiders. And his tent had spiders everywhere because he had set up his tent right on top of spider's nest. So he immediately got out of his tent and he shook off the spiders. He said thankfully he didn't get bit, but that is one of the many stories from Hill Country, Texas, that talk about these massive infestations of spiders.
Series of spooky stories, except for it's a pastor grooming someone in his youth group and his wife being delusional on the internet and airing out everyone's business. This woman posts a 10-minute long TikTok talking about the affair that her husband had, saying he started to cheat on her and she didn't know it at first. He went to his supervisor saying that he was having an inappropriate relationship. It wasn't going to happen anymore. And then went to the person that he was having an inappropriate relationship with, saying that they could continue the relationship. They were going to get like these burner phones, basically. Continued the inappropriate relationship, then went back to the supervisor again, saying that he was still having this inappropriate relationship, but he was going to stop this time. And then he ends up telling her about the inappropriate relationship. She says that this is one of her closest friends, and she says that about 50 times in all of her fucking TikTok videos. Now, here's the important parts that we need to know. This man was a youth minister. Was the woman a minor whenever they had the affair? No. But she said that she was in his youth group whenever she was in high school, and that's when the grooming began. She says that she had conversations with this woman, asking if he had done anything inappropriate like the groom, and if she felt like she was basically coerced, and she was told no. So she was just confused on why she would tell somebody that, and why they would sue on those grounds, because the woman ended up suing the church. People are in her comment section like, why the fuck are you posting this on the internet? What are we doing here? Because she mentions, I don't even know if I should be posting this on the internet. No, girl, you shouldn't be. But she's also saying that she wants to be some type of support system because Jen Hamilton was posting her divorce situation and the affair that her husband had while they were together. And she was kind of inspired by it. This is not the same situation because they are still together. She is still with her husband. She ends up posting the timeline that she created. In the timeline that she posts, she has the names. She has the fucking names, not redacted, not marked out at all. And she says the names. So the complaint filed by so-and-so, whatever. And it was settled out of court, mind you. So one of her main things that she's trying to point out is this is not a criminal case. There was no conviction or no guilty, whatever. And people are like, that doesn't mean that he was not guilty. That means that he's settled out of court, or the church did, because she was suing the church. People are trying to get it through her thick ass fucking skull that no matter when the affair happened, he was still grooming her. Someone else also made note in the comment section. The comment section of this video right here where she's trying to say that he was not grooming her. It literally says in the closed caption, she was saying she's been groomed by him, like effectively. And when I went and watched the video, she was basically saying, yeah, we had this conversation and basically he's been having this affair and said all of this and she's effectively been groomed by him. You know what I mean? She wants to make it abundantly clear that she wasn't a minor whenever this happened. People are begging her to use her critical thinking skill and said the issue was that he was her youth pastor at one point. Then once she became of age, the relationship transitioned into a sexual relationship. Is that not grooming? Or am I missing something? It's like that one youth pastor who had balloons and like this celebration whenever his girlfriend could officially become his girlfriend because she was of age. Come the fuck on. She argues there was no relationship until 2022 and the case was transitioned away from that based on what evidence was submitted. It focused on April 2025. What is going on up here? What is happening? Denial is not just a river in Egypt. She's saying that she is in therapy, trying to work through all of this. And I have a feeling that her therapist does not know that she's posted this online. There's no way that they know. And she's fighting this fight like she is him because she essentially is, that is still her husband and they are still fucking together. They are one, okay? She knows exactly what happened and she chose to stay with him and has continued to choose to stay with him. She is literally saying that she is in therapy right now and they're trying to work through it. Don't know what could happen in the future. However, you are still with him. You are still calling him your husband. So here we are now. Not only is he in the wrong, you are also in the fucking wrong because you are defending him. That's exactly what you're doing. You are defending him and his actions and trying to make excuses for the things that he did based off of bullshit technicality. Well, the relationship like that didn't actually start until then. No, it was the grooming. He gained her trust. He knew exactly how he felt about her. And as soon as he got the chance, there it was. He was hiding it. He knew that it was wrong. He admitted it to his superior and then went behind everyone's back, including yours, again, saying that they could continue the relationship in secret with some fake ass fucking burner phones and all type of shit, doing extra dirty shit. This whole situation is crazy and I am appalled. I thought that this one video was bad, but then when you watch her other video, it's awful. Tell me what you think in the comments.
One of my cousins stayed in a rental house for about a week since she was in the process of moving. During that time, she claimed that she kept experiencing paranormal things throughout the entire house. It was always when she was alone. On the last night that she stayed there, she went around taking pictures to see if she could capture anything, but she wasn't expecting to capture this. I caught this on a security camera in my house from one room down the hall. The video shows something walking from one room to another. There is a security camera inside of the room that it came from, but it didn't record anything. However, the camera that I have pointed towards the hallway captured this human-like figure. I took this picture on a camera in one of the upstairs rooms of the Riddle House in the South Florida Fairgrounds. The Riddle House actually has an episode on Ghost Adventures. This picture was taken along with a few others back to back, and this is the only one that captures this figure. My picture has been proven to be real, and I've even showed it to multiple employees, and they've always been fascinated. My car's reversing camera caught this figure when I was completely alone on an empty back road. I didn't see anything with my own eyes, and this photo terrifies me.
One night, there was a driver driving on US 23 near Cary, Ohio. And he decides he's going to pull over for the night and get some sleep. So he pulls into this rest area and he notices that his truck is the only vehicle there for the night. So he gets in the back of his truck, he lays down, he goes to bed. When all of a sudden, he hears a loud bang, and his truck begins to shake violently. So he jumps up, and he's wondering, what is going on? And it stops. And right at that moment, he notices that his cabin is ice cold, even though it is the middle of summer and it's 90 degrees outside. So he gets out of his truck, and to his surprise, his whole trailer and truck has been completely moved over. And not only that, there is a large dent in his trailer, like something had hit it very hard. And there's significant amounts of damage on the side of his truck. So he gets back in his truck, and he calls dispatch. And they say, go ahead and contact 911 and tell them what happened and file a police report. So the police are speaking with him on the phone. They say, hey, it's probably going to be about 30 minutes. We're responding to another call. This is an emergency, right? And he says, no. So he gets, he's just sitting in his truck, and he's waiting for the police to come now. He decides, what? I need to go inside and use the restroom and, just kind of get some fresh air. So he gets out of his truck, and he starts going towards the building when he notices there's a man standing next to the building. And he can't really make out anything of this man, his face, anything that he's wearing. It's just sort of a shape of this man. And all of a sudden he notices this man is pointing at him. And then he starts running right directly at him. And so this driver runs and jumps back in his truck. And he's expecting this guy to come and confront him and come into his truck. But as he turns back and looks out the window, this man is gone. And so he gets in the back of his truck, and he grabs his pistol, and he's just clenching it, thinking, someone is about to enter the truck, and I'm going to have to fight them. When all of a sudden he hears a loud thump, thump, thump on the top of his truck. And all of a sudden, he sees a head pop down into his windshield. And this black tongue comes out and it starts licking the windshield. And just at that moment, the police arrive. And this thing, whatever it is, slowly goes back up and disappears. So he's all shaken up. He can't really talk. He gets out of the vehicle and he tells the police, hey, something hit my truck and there's a guy out here. And the police are confused. And he can't understand why they're so confused. And they said, something hit your truck? And he said, yeah. And so the police say, well, come here. Show us where. Something hit your truck. And he's amazed when he goes out and he sees that there is now no damage on his truck. His truck is still parked in the parking space and hasn't moved. And everything seems fine. So he, gets in his truck and he leaves. And he said he would never return to that rest area again. Now, this next story takes place in Arizona, near Holbrook. This truck driver pulls off the interstate onto some back roads to park his truck for the night. And he gets in the back of his truck and lays down. And all of a sudden he notices this bright light is peering through his windshield. And it's getting brighter and brighter. And he jumps up and who is this ridiculous person that's shining their brights into my window? But that's when he notices, when he gets in the front seat, is that it's not a vehicle, it's not a car, but it's this disc-shaped craft. And it is landed right on the road out in front of his truck. And at this time, he notices that his CB radio and all the electronics in his car are going haywire. And the next thing he knows, now he is driving on the highway again, but he's going in the opposite direction. It's now the afternoon, it's daytime, and he's confused about what is going on. So he calls in to dispatch, and dispatch is very angry and like, hey, where have you been? You were supposed to drop that load off 12 hours ago, and you never did. Like, what's going on? And he can't figure out, what happened, because he wasn't supposed to drop the load off until that morning, and now it's the next day. And almost 25 hours had passed from that time when he sees this light in his window.
New to TikTok and scared to go live? It's way easier than you think. Tap the Go Live link below just once and wait 3 seconds to start.
I was working as an EMT when the patient flatlined, and then they opened their eyes while the monitor still showed no heartbeat. This is Scare with Jess, and today's story is about a patient that I had that I still can't explain. I had been an EMT for a little over 2 years when this happened. My partner and I were working an overnight shift in a pretty rural area, and a little after 1 a.m, we got called for an unconscious man found near the side of the road. A driver had seen him lying in the grass and stopped. By the time we got there, the man was awake, but something was clearly wrong. He looked maybe 40 with no shoes, jeans soaked almost to his knees. His shirt was ripped along one shoulder, and he had scratches all over his arms like he'd been moving through brush. But there wasn't any obvious major injury, so I asked his name, and he stared past me. I asked if he knew where he was, and nothing. And then he looked towards the tree line on the other side of the road and smiled. Not at us, at something in the woods. I followed his eyes but didn't see anything. His vitals were bad enough that we decided to transport him. His heart rate was extremely low and his blood pressure was dropping. We got him into the ambulance, and the entire time, he never said a word. But right before I shut the doors, he looked at the woods one more time, and I swear his expression changed. He looked scared, like he suddenly realized we were taking him away from something. We started towards the hospital. I was in the back with him while my partner drove. And for the first few minutes, he just lay there staring at the ceiling. I kept trying to get information from him, his name and his birthday, or if he had taken anything, if he remembered how he ended up outside, and he wouldn't answer. And then he turned his head toward me and whispered, "It followed me out." I asked, "What followed you?" And his eyes moved towards the ambulance doors, and then his whole body tightened. The monitor started alarming, and his heartbeat dropped fast. I called up to my partner, and by the time I looked back at the monitor, I couldn't feel a pulse. And then the rhythm disappeared. Flatline.
We pulled over and my partner came out into the back and we started working the arrest. CPR and airway, everything we were trained to do. There was no response and the monitor still showed nothing, no pulse. And I wanted to make this clear because people always ask me whether the monitor malfunctioned. We checked, we changed the leads and we confirmed it. And this man was in cardiac arrest. At one point, I was leaning over him while my partner was getting equipment ready, and his hand closed around my wrist, hard. I jerked away so fast I hit the cabinet behind me, and my partner looked at me. I said, "He just grabbed me." We both immediately checked him again because obviously our first thought was that we had gotten him back, but no pulse. The monitor was still flat, and then the man sat up. It wasn't gradual, he just came straight upright on the stretcher. My partner stumbled backwards, and I remember looking at the monitor and then at him, because my brain could not make those two things exist at the same time. The leads were still attached to his chest, straight line, no rhythm, but he was sitting there looking at us. And then he opened his eyes all the way, and they were black, completely black. There was no white around them. I couldn't even see his irises. Nothing. It looked like both of his eyes had been filled in with ink, and neither of us moved. He turned his head toward my partner and then toward me and started laughing. It wasn't loud at first, just this low laugh under his breath, and then it got harder. His shoulders started shaking and he threw his head back and laughed like something was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And all while that monitor was still showing us a flat line beside him. My partner said, "What is happening?" And the man stopped laughing, looked directly at him and said, "You shouldn't have stopped." And then he ripped the monitor leads off his chest, and my partner moved toward him, and the guy lunged off the stretcher. The back doors were right behind us, and my partner had opened one when he came back to help, and before either of us could grab the guy, he shoved it the rest of the way open, and he jumped out. Straight onto the road, barefoot. I followed him to the doors, and he ran across both lanes and towards the trees. I yelled for him to stop, and he didn't even look back. And then he disappeared into the woods. The part I remember most is how fast he moved. This wasn't somebody staggering after waking up. He sprinted. Within seconds, he was gone. We didn't go after him. We called it in and stayed by the ambulance. Other responders searched around the road and into the woods, and they didn't find him. I've spent years trying to come up with some medical explanation for what I saw, that maybe the monitor was wrong, or I missed a pulse, or maybe his eyes looked strange because of the lighting. Maybe adrenaline changed how I remembered it. And I can accept that memory isn't perfect, but there are 3 things I know. I checked that man myself, and he didn't have a pulse. The monitor was still showing nothing when he sat up, and when he looked at me directly in the face and started laughing, his eyes were completely black. I never found out where he went, and I still think about what he said before we lost him. It followed me out. Because sometimes I wonder if the man running into the woods was actually trying to get away from us, or if he was going back to whatever had been waiting for him there. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Those of us who had a kick, how are you doing? Are we collectively all okay? That was traumatic, wasn't it? I want to tell you my story, okay? I'm sure we all have one, and I'm sure they're all really bad, but this one is probably one of the worst ones you're gonna hear ever. It fucking haunts me. It haunts me to this day that I this guy is just still out and about. Like, he's not, I did nothing about this. I was 14 years old and I had this like 27-ish year old boyfriend on Kik or whatever, which gross. I'm 27 years old right now. I can't even imagine. My youngest sister is 14 right now, and dude, she pisses me off so bad. Like, I can't even like the age gap is imminent. Like, it's there. You can fucking tell. I don't know. I could just never be with a 14-year-old romantically ever in my fucking life. That's fucking weird. Genuinely. Anyway, whatever. We did the normal Kik stuff, you know, talked every single day, shared pictures back and forth, even the inappropriate pictures and all that sort of stuff. But we ended up planning on meeting each other. And it was already weird as fuck because he sent me coordinates to me. Like, I had to like
like Randonautica fucking find this guy. And basically the coordinates led me to this trail that was very familiar to me, okay? Like it was the trail that was off of my parents' house, not off of my parents' house, but like near my parents' house. So you had to like walk up the road a little ways and then you go through the woods a little bit and then you'd find the trail. All right, so boom, I wait for my parents to go to sleep one night and I climb out my window. Just a flashlight and no phone, mind you. I didn't have a phone at this time. This was the era of, I don't think it was the first generation iPods, but it was the ones with the camera, maybe the second gen, okay? It was like an iPod. Well, I just left that at home. Like, whatever, I'm going to meet my boyfriend. What the fuck do I need that for, right? So, but I am smart enough to take a flashlight because I know that the forest is dark at night. And I was not scared at the time. I knew those woods like the back of my hand. Like that was like my playground, basically. I knew my way around this trail until I didn't, because then like the coordinates started taking me to parts of the woods that I was not familiar with. Like it went a little bit further than I had ever wandered. Eventually I end up getting to the spot, right? And he's already there. I shine the flashlight there and boom, he's right there. And I'm like, okay. Start to get that like little fluttery butterfly feeling. I'm like, oh my God, it's my man. Like, ugh. So we meet each other, we're like, hey, hi, blah, blah, kiss, blah, 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 whatever. We end up doing stuff, and y'all don't need to come in the comments and tell me that that's our word. I already know. You don't need to tell me what that is. I know what happened to me. I'm very aware, okay? You don't need to come say, oh, baby, I feel so bad for you. Hold my hand. I'm gonna hold your hand when you tell me. I had so many comments on the last video that I posted about this whole thing, like, ugh, I don't want your fucking sick-ass sympathy, okay? Just listen. Just listen to me. That's all I want. Whatever, once we're done, he suggests that we go for a walk down by the stream, and I'm like, okay, how romantic. Yeah, let's go. So we go down to the stream, okay? And I'm still in this like weird stage of like feeling awkward and weird about everything, but also wanting to like really, really impress him. So honestly, I'm like willing to do whatever at this point, if you haven't noticed already. We walk a little ways away, right? Until we find this like rope swing. It was really cool because this was like a rope swing that it looked like some kids had put up, and it was really cool because it was right by this really pretty waterfall. And literally my 14-year-old ass was like, oh my God, this is the most romantic thing of my life. So he ends up like being a show off or whatever and swings on the rope. He swings out, he makes it back across, and then he's like, oh my God, you should totally take a turn, right? And I'm like, oh my God, maybe I should do this to impress him. All I'm hearing is the song Stupid Girls by Pink playing in my head. I was that stupid girl. Anyway, so I swing on the rope, right? But I don't make it because the rope fucking snaps, and into the waterfall I go, rushing down the fucking river. I clock my head, and I don't remember anything after that until the moment when I wake up. The next thing I know, I'm waking up on the dirt and I'm hearing like what sounds like a shovel shoveling gravel or like dirt and rocks and shit. And so at first I like look up, I'm staring at the sky, and then I turn my head over and I see this guy. By the way, his name is Tony. I see this guy, Tony, and he's digging a fucking hole. He's digging a hole. First of all, where the fuck did he get a shovel? Second of all, why the fuck is he digging a hole? Third of all, what the fuck? I'm like too scared to move my head and like make him realize that I'm like conscious. So I slowly move my head back to the position that it was in, and I kind of like shut my eyes, but like barely keeping them open a little bit, you know what I mean? And then I start to hear footsteps. He's walking closer to me. I shut my eyes all the way, and I'm just trying to like control my breathing and make it seem like I'm not fucking frantic and freaking out. I don't know what the fuck to do until I feel him grab my ankles, and I'm like, dude, this dude's gonna fucking bury me. Like, what is going on? So that's when my fight or flight finally kicked in, and I start fucking flailing around. I kick this motherfucker so hard, right in his fuck ass kneecaps. I mean, you could totally tell he was not expecting me to do this because he just like collapsed instantly, which then gave me enough time to jump up and run for my fucking life. Basically, I just followed the river until I found my way back to the trail that I knew, and then made my way home. And I didn't even like bother to like look back and see if he was following me or anything like that, but apparently he wasn't. I ended up making it back home, and then when I did, I immediately like went onto my iPod, and there was a message from Tony, and he said, I'm so sorry, I thought you were dead. So yeah, that confirmed that this motherfucker was going to try to bury me because he thought I fucking died. Yeah. What's your craziest kick experience? I just can't fucking believe that. I never called the police or anything. I didn't even tell my parents that I left that night. Not a fucking word out of me. But I also blocked him, and then I never heard from him again. Actually, there's nothing. Halt. I did actually hear from him again. He like ended up adding me on Facebook a couple years later, like just trying to pretend and act like nothing ever happened. And like at first I went along with it just to like see, like just get my feelers out and like see what he would say. I ended up blocking his ass so fucking fast. I don't know what, like, what the fuck. Anyways, yeah, please don't go try to look this guy up. I already posted this one time on here and you guys looked him up. You found the completely wrong person and like you're posting pictures of this guy in the fucking comments and it's not him. I haven't been able to find him on Facebook or anywhere actually, like the real person. So whoever you're finding, it's not him. But yeah, that's my story.
Here's a terrifying tale to send you off to sleep. A reminder, if you will, that we should be more afraid of the living than the dead. In 2017, 43-year-old recent divorcee Elaine moved into a cottage on the outskirts of Yorkshire. She had not been able to conceive children with her former husband, and this had driven a wedge between the couple. Whilst she had never lived alone in her life, she could make this work. It was better than the hell she was living in beforehand. But here in the countryside, it was so isolated, so quiet. One evening, as a storm rumbled outside, Elaine took herself off to bed, sleeping soundly until being awoken around 2 a.m. by a loud bang. She paused in the darkness of her bedroom for several minutes, but alas, all was silent. It must have been a bad dream. So off she went back to sleep. In the morning, she checked her mobile phone as most of us do, and found her camera roll was now larger than it was the night before. Elaine clicked into the gallery, only to find several photographs of herself asleep in bed. This was impossible. She lived alone. Each of the images had a timestamp: 1:58 a.m., 1:59 a.m.
And today on the haunted house next door, the Lawson Hotel. Before Wichita had modern hotels, this beautiful 11-story building hosted everyone from Amelia Earhart to Elvis. This building was actually opened on New Year's Eve in 1918, and the owner actually passed away 3 days later in his home. It was opened by Henry Lawson, who lived at 345 North Belmont in Wichita, Kansas. If you want to go investigate one of my other videos, I give lots of detail on that house. So the architecture style of this building is very, very interesting. And this is why I think some people will say it looks old. What does that mean, it looks old? So this is commercial mixed with second Renaissance revival. And also another element that we call Chicago. Chicago to me is this building. So we're going to see the commercial element. It looks like a commercial building with the grid windows, but there's also some details that just make it look old, with the columns, the arches on the upper windows. But that is actually that second Renaissance revival that I'm talking about. The terracotta brick, stained glass, which was actually on every window on the upper level. The first 2 floors also had marble. It was a very, very fancy hotel. In the 1930s, KFH broadcasted live from this building. They were a radio station based out of Hutch that covered mostly Hutch, but also some Wichita events. So there is one reported death here at this property, and that was Mildred Kelly. She was an elevator operator in 1945, and the controversy around how she died is mixed. I've heard reports that she fell down the shaft 8 stories to her death. I've heard that she was trapped in the doors, and the doors continued to close and tried to, go up and down. And then I've heard that the elevator fell on her and crushed her. So that's all up for debate because lots of different newspaper articles say different things. So this building did stay a hotel until 1969, and at that point it was converted into a retirement home called the Defenders Townhouse. In the mid-80s, they cleared that out and they made way for the Market Center. So in 1986, the Market Center opened, which might be what you know it as now. So 1986, Market Center, and it stays that way until 2015. In 2015, they cleared everything out and they said they were going to build affordable housing in the building. Well, it sat empty for quite a long time until actually in 2024, they announced that they're actually doing it. They're actually making units in this building for affordable housing. Before I move on from this, I wanted to show you that if you're into Wichita history, a lot of these old postcards can be found on eBay if you want to buy them. So this is the ad for the Market Center Apartments. They are making 115 affordable apartments, and they have studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, starting December 2026. And there are income limits to this, and I clicked on it. You can play with this, but basically the maximum, so if it was a family of 4, you could only make like $50,000. Like, it's pretty limited on how much you can make to live there. But if you were wondering what a project like this costs, it was $35 million, and the company that looks to be doing the development work was called K2, and they were out of California. If you're like, I'm about to move in there, I want you to know they have a Facebook page, so you can go get on there and follow along, because they have some progress pictures. I wonder what the ghosts of the Market Center are thinking about this. I don't know. I don't know if Henry likes it, but yeah, they look nicely redone. They look like 2026. And here's pricing I found, $419 to $990 a month. Enjoy that.
Never take a shower late at night. A man told this very terrifying story of something that happened while his kids and wife were off on vacation and he was home alone. He had stayed behind because of work and wasn't able to take time off, and the first few nights were completely normal. Until one night around 1 in the morning, he woke up and realized that he hadn't showered yet. He had gotten back from work and completely passed out. He was exhausted, but he figured that a really hot shower would make him relaxed. And the creepy thing about his shower, about his bathroom, was that like in the shower, there was like this really weird rectangular little window where you could see the outside. I mean, it was pretty high. You could see like the trees in the night and everything. Now, while he was showering, he swore that he kept seeing movement outside. But like I said, this little window you could see outside, it was very high, so he most likely thought it was a tree. But it kept happening over and over again, to the corner of his eye. Creepiest part was that he kept noticing that this wasn't really a tree. Whatever it was kept passing by. But how if it was super duper high? Like, there's no way a human could go up there. Now, he heard crunching, like if someone was walking, and he turned off the shower. He stood there and he tried to convince himself that it was just an animal or something, but he did hear footsteps. He turned the shower back on and completely ignored this feeling, but when he was done, he turned around, because you know that feeling you get, like you feel like someone's watching you? He turned around, and what he saw was completely terrorizing. He saw like an owl-like creature. He wasn't too sure. The face looked like an owl, but it had a nose and human lips. He ran out of the shower, he slipped, and he said that he passed out. He ended up waking up around 4 in the morning. He was still in the shower, the lights were on, and he remembers exactly what happened. When he checked again, there was nothing there. He doesn't really like speaking about this because he's still really terrified, but this is why you should never shower late at night, especially if your family is away.
Want to get creeped out? I recently learned more about Victorian death practices, so now you're going to hear about it too. Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, died in 1861, and Queen Victoria, she knew how to mourn because she wore black mourning clothes for the remaining 40 years of her life. Her public grief really helped shape the Victorian mourning culture. And at that time, death was obviously a lot more part of everyday life than it is today. There were frequent disease outbreaks, a lot of infant deaths, and limited medical knowledge that we didn't have then that we now have today. We save a lot of lives today that we couldn't save then. Most people back then died in their homes. They had family members who cared for them while they were dying. Loved ones, particularly usually women, would actually wash and dress the body themselves after that person had passed. Bodies were displayed in the home before the burial. They would have a lot of flowers though, and maybe some different spices to try to keep the scent of death at bay, because we all know that it doesn't smell good. Other things that they would do during the Victorian era would be covering mirrors, which was meant to stop the deceased from getting stuck inside the mirrors, or they would stop the clocks at the moment of that person's death, not only to mark the exact moment of death and show respect, but also out of superstition. This is the one I didn't know. They had this belief that if they left the clocks running, the deceased spirit might become trapped and unable to move on. The soul could become confused or linger, or someone else in the house might die. Women who became widows were were expected to practice mourning practices by wearing full black mourning attire, often for 2 years or more, and with no jewelry unless it was mourning jewelry, whereas men were only expected to do this for a few months. When a female widow was originally practicing mourning, she would be in full black clothing, potentially wearing a veil, and not be attending any social events. Later, it would get less restrictive, and some different fabrics would be allowed, and sometimes some different colors like gray or lavender or purple or mauve. Mourning jewelry was rings, lockets, brooches, bracelets, earrings, often containing woven in human hair, love, photographs, initials, tiny portraits. Hair was definitely considered a lasting keepsake. I love the hair art that they used to do. So incredible, so cool, grosses so many people out. I want it in my home. So that's another huge thing that they would do. Have these floral wreaths made of hair with intricate braided design, framed beadwork, framed artwork, jewelry. Another one of my favorites was post-mortem photography. So morbid, but also in some ways very beautiful. Bodies might be posed sleeping peacefully, posed in a chair, beside family members, and sometimes would have eyes painted on after development. Super fascinating, eerie, but also like eerily beautiful. Funerals during the Victorian era were elaborate. Wealthier families would hire undertakers. Coffins would be very ornate and decorative. Horse-drawn hearses were a symbol of status, and large funeral processions were common. There were also something called funeral mutes that would sometimes be hired. They would stand silently outside the house or church, wear black coats and hats, create this atmosphere of solemnness, and this symbolized respect for the deceased. People also created death masks. They would have plaster casts of the family member's face who had passed immediately after death to preserve their likeness, have it as a memorial keepsake, as an artistic reference, and eventually as a scientific study. I think that would be really cool to have in your home. During the 1800s, of course, people also really feared being buried alive, so they had coffin bells so that if you were buried alive, you could just ring the little bell and someone would hopefully go, oh, someone out here is buried alive, and hopefully they could get you out in time. Super scary. Cemeteries were also treated differently than they are today. They were parks. People would visit them and have picnics, go read, go sketch, take walks, enjoy nature. They were just a beautiful place that people really appreciated in a way that they maybe don't now. There was this older tradition called memento mori. Remember, you must die. It was this idea that death is inevitable, and remembering mortality encourages a meaningful life. Love memento mori. Spiritualism really became very popular in the 1800s. That's why in the Victorian era we have this spiritualist movement, and the Victorians believed that they could communicate with the dead through seances, mediums, spirit writing, table tipping, spirit photography, and later Ouija boards. There were mourning etiquette books that would tell you exactly how long and how to grieve certain relatives that would pass. I don't know, I find Victorian death practices fascinating, and I think we should bring some of them back, like, you know?
I was working the night shift at a hospital when I started to notice the same woman would sit in the waiting room and nobody else could see her. I really enjoyed working the night shifts because they were just very peaceful, very quiet, especially around 3 a.m. We used to have this waiting area that was held on the upper floor. It wasn't used very often, however, one night I was walking down that hallway and I noticed an older lady kind of sitting in one of the chairs and she was alone. She was wearing like this long gray sweatshirt and she had like a purse on her lap, probably in her 60s, and I asked her if she needed help finding somebody. And she just kind of did like a little half smile and she said, I'm waiting for my daughter. I told her that I could ask the front desk to help and she was like, nope, don't worry about it, like she'll come back. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, enjoy your time, I guess, I don't know. And I went back to work, and then the following night I noticed that this lady was here in the chairs again, and she was wearing the same outfit, same purse. And so that's when I went over to one of the other nurses and I was like, are we expecting anybody on the upper floor tonight? And she said, no, we're not expecting anybody. Then she told me that the upper floor has been empty all night. So then I went back up to the place where I saw the lady and she was gone. The chairs were empty, so I just assumed she went home. I don't know, a weird fluke. I didn't see her until 3 nights later and I came back and she was there. And this time she looked directly into my eyes and she said, have you seen my daughter? I told her no, and she looked so distraught. She was like, she was supposed to come back for me, and she started sobbing. I felt horrible. I went and I got one of the other nurses, and then when I brought her back, the lady was gone again. And then that's when my nurse that I was with, she told me a story that I hadn't heard before. She told me that it was like, I think it was like 15 years ago is what she said, that a mom was here and she was waiting for her daughter to come out of emergency surgery. And she just kept saying like, she'll come back for me, whatever. And her daughter wound up passing away. And the mom had such a hard time coping with this that she kept coming back to this waiting room over and over, even though her daughter had already passed. And she literally passed away from an actual heartbreak. So not only did the daughter die, but the mom also died in this waiting room, waiting for her daughter to come out. The story doesn't stop there though. After I was told this story, I didn't see this lady for about 2 weeks, and then she reappeared again as I was walking down the hallway, and this time I just kind of, it was creepy because she's obviously a ghost, you know. But she mentioned her daughter, and I said, okay, but what if she doesn't come back? And the lady said she already did. That's when I heard some footsteps behind me, and so I looked back, and I didn't see anybody there, but my assumption from what she said is that they have been reunited in the afterlife. I don't work at that hospital anymore, but I do wonder if anybody else has seen her since.
There's a popular music artist in Hollywood that many people believe isn't even a human. This artist's name is Banshee. The thing that drew a lot of popularity to this artist is her unnatural vocal range. At first, everyone was just thinking to themselves, oh my god, this girl has great range, this is spectacular, super good music. But then people started to think, this is not possible. This vocal range for a human being is not natural. No human has this. Something weird is going on. If you've ever heard her music, she can go super low, all the way up to super high, to the middle. It's just very freaky, talented range. But then people actually started to think about it and think, oh, what other than human has such a crazy vocal range like this artist? Sirens. You see, for those of you that don't know, sirens are these mystical creatures that would live out deep into the ocean, and they would sing these beautiful, beautiful songs that were so mesmerizing, they would lure sailors into the ocean. You see, now many people believe that this artist Banshee shares a lot in common with these mystical creatures known as sirens. Because of her unnatural vocal range and her ability to project her voice in unnatural ways, many people on the internet speculate that Banshee is either a siren or maybe part siren, and is disguising herself as a human to make it big in the music industry. Whenever you get a chance, I encourage you to listen to this music and let me know what you think. Is this artist a siren, or is she just a human who is very talented?
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. This happened to me in 2015, and I was about 16 years old at the time. My family had just moved to Guadalajara, Mexico, because of my father's job. Before that, we'd been living in Mexico City, which I absolutely hated. So when my parents told me we were moving, I was excited. I grew up pretty fortunate. I have 2 loving parents, a little brother, and my dad had a stable job. There was never really anything in my life that made me feel like I had to be afraid of the world, until we moved into that house. My mom insisted on buying this enormous, fully furnished 2-story house. It had 5 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, multiple kitchens, and more space than we honestly needed. And from the outside, it was beautiful. But when you walked in, you knew something was off. The first night there confirmed it to me. I was lying awake in my new bedroom, trying to get comfortable, when I started hearing faint creaking noises. Now, I didn't know the house yet, so I wasn't familiar with what could just be normal settling noises, but the creaks seemed to be coming from everywhere. One from the hallway, one from downstairs somewhere, and some from just the other side of my own bedroom. It felt strange that they would all be happening at once, but I tried not to think about it. Eventually, I started drifting off. But before I could, I felt it. A surge went through the wall directly behind my bed. I wish that I could properly describe it, but I can't, other than it felt like an intense vibration traveling through the wall, and the entire bed shook underneath me. Now, I knew that wasn't normal. I couldn't explain it away with just not knowing the house yet. I jumped out of bed and ran across the floor to my parents' bedroom. I woke them up and I told them that there was something inside the walls. Of course, they told me it was probably just the house settling. But I was insistent, and I told them that this was different. Still, they told me to just go back to bed. But I didn't want to go back into that room, so I begged them to let me sleep in their bed, and they agreed. The next day, my parents went to work, and my brother and I were home alone because it was Easter break. We went upstairs to my bedroom and started unpacking boxes. My room had 2 sets of windows, one on each side of the bed, and they were separated by a pretty large distance. We were talking and unpacking when suddenly, knock, knock. We snapped our heads in the direction of one of the windows where the sound had come from, and then looked at each other when we realized no one was there. Then, knock, knock. This time, the sound came from the other window. We immediately turned toward it, and when we did, knock. The sound came from the first window again. We looked back, knock, knock. The other window, back and forth, back and forth. The knocks went from window to window as we looked and tried to orient where the sound was coming from. It was like whatever was making the sound knew exactly where we were looking. In our panic, we almost forgot one small detail. My bedroom was on the second floor. We must have come to the realization around the same time because we glanced at each other one last time before we ran. And I mean, we practically flew down the stairs into the living room where we stayed together until our parents came home. When they did, we told them what happened, but again, we were dismissed. That night, I experienced something that I'd never experienced before: sleep paralysis. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night completely drenched in sweat, and when I tried to move, I couldn't. Panic immediately took over as my eyes roamed the room. I saw it. In the far corner between the wall and my closet, there was a figure, tall and slender, almost completely black, and it didn't move at first, but as I kept watching it, it started slowly moving towards me. Step by step, it crept closer until it reached the foot of my bed, and it stopped. It just stood there, staring directly at me, and then the whispering started. I couldn't understand a single word. It was too quiet to make out, but it was definitely a voice. Something was whispering to me. I was so scared at this point and trying desperately to move, to scream, to do something other than stare at this thing in front of me, but I couldn't. The figure remained at the foot of my bed, and the whispering continued, and I had to lay there and endure it. I started hyperventilating. I was sweating so bad that my entire body felt soaked. I remember feeling like I was going to be trapped there forever, but then something felt like it broke. I'm not sure what, but that's the best way I could describe it, and I could suddenly move again. From one second to the next, I had command over my body, and the figure was gone. I didn't move, though. Maybe I was too scared to get out of the bed, but I just stayed put for the rest of the night until the next morning. And that morning, before my parents went to work, I cried and told them what had happened. This time, my dad finally decided to do something about this, and he contacted a local priest to come cleanse the house. That evening, he showed up, and he walked through the house using holy water and prayers. He went from room to room and kind of moved in a practiced motion until he reached the hallway outside my bedroom. That's when he stopped. He stared towards my room. He told us he could feel an extremely dark energy coming from inside. He walked toward my closet and without hesitation moved things aside, and that's when we saw them. On the wall in the closet were strange symbols carved into the surface. They were covering the wall. The priest immediately told us that we needed to pray over the room, and so we did. Eventually, my mom became friends with one of the neighbors, and at some point, she told her what had been happening in our house. The previous owner had been an elderly woman who lived in the house alone after her husband died, and apparently, she practiced brujeria right there in my bedroom. Our neighbor explained that she and her family could see directly into that room from their house, and for years, they had noticed strange things. They would sometimes see a strange yellow light glowing from that bedroom. They could hear chanting coming from inside, and apparently they had seen and heard it so many times that they knew exactly which room we were talking about. The woman had died in the house from a seizure while taking a bath. And after hearing all of this, I refused to stay in that room anymore. I moved into another room on the opposite side of the house, and I never completely felt comfortable there after that. My parents still live in that house, and whenever I visit, I refuse to go anywhere near that bedroom. Call me crazy, but I still see things, and I swear I can still hear whispering when no one is around.
From the Nightmare Society, this tale is titled, When a Siren Calls. I was on my way home after visiting my girlfriend at her mom's house when I decided to stop at Lechtwood State Park. I had been there once before, but hadn't been to the gorge overlooks in the northern part of the 17-mile-long preserve. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations in New York after Niagara Falls, but it was late in the fall, long past leaf season, so on that evening I was practically alone as I stopped at each of the scenic lookouts. I was sitting on a bench at the tea table overlook when I noticed a young woman talking on a payphone across the road. I hadn't seen a payphone in years, let alone someone actually using it. She looked to be in her early 20s, had dark brown hair, and was wearing a red wind jacket with the hood up. I didn't watch her for too long because I know how creepy it'd be if she caught me staring at her, it being near twilight and no one else around but the two of us, which was why it startled me when she appeared next to me. "Oh, hey! You scared me," I said, my voice crackling a little bit. She looked at me, not quite facing me, as she leaned against the waist-high rock wall with its no climbing signs every few feet. "Have you been here before?" she asked. "Yeah, once, and I saw the waterfalls and stayed only a night." It's nicer up here, I think, especially now that everyone's gone." "Okay. Do you live nearby?" "Yes," she said and sat back down on the wall. I can now see most of her face despite a few hairs that spilled out from her hoodie. She was a very pretty girl. She reminded me of a Dawson's Creek-era Katie Holmes with the way she pursed her lips. "Hey, could you do me a favor?" she asked. "Maybe." I already felt a little weird talking to this girl who was probably 10 to 15 years younger than me. I was hoping she wasn't about to ask me for money or drugs. Could you get that phone if it rings?" "Why?" "It's my boyfriend. He knows I come up here when I don't want to deal with this crap." "Okay, I guess." I was getting a little curious. What should I say to him? She crinkled her nose and smiled. "Tell him you're on a date with me." I can't quite remember the idle chat we made over the next few minutes before the phone rang, but when it did, I didn't hesitate to get up and go towards the phone, ready to serve as this girl's receptionist. Before I crossed the road, I looked back. I'm not exactly sure why I looked back, but maybe it was to gauge the girl's reaction to see whether she was messing with me. But when I did check on her, I saw that she was standing on the rock wall where it explicitly stated no one should be standing. She was looking at me funny too. I might have described it as a smirk if it wasn't so dim. Before I could even register that she was in danger, she was already diving head first into the gorge. I yelled. I ran to the wall, climbing up it on myself, looking over to see if I could see any signs of hope. But there was no way to see directly down due to the shape of the rock face. When I heard a car coming, I jumped down and ran toward the road. All the while, the payphone kept ringing. Luckily, it was a ranger. He stopped when he saw me coming. "Sir, this girl just jumped into the gorge." I rambled on with the details of what had transpired. The ranger listened carefully, but his face revealed very little emotion. He got out of the car before I could even finish with everything I'd seen. He was tall and about my age and asked, "Dark hair, jeans, red windbreaker?" I nodded. I noticed the payphone stopped ringing. I was going to get the phone for her. "Oh, Christ, really?" he remarked. "We can't get rid of the payphone because of the pavilions and camping area nearby. State law." "What?" "You're really lucky you didn't answer that phone." I was beside myself. Why wasn't he getting on his radio and contacting the emergency rescue folks? "I'm telling you, this girl just flung herself into the gorge." The ranger took a few steps towards me, patted me on the shoulder. "You did see something here, sir. Just not a flesh and blood person." I'm sorry I didn't make it in time. I tried to get up here before 6. I was running late. "She won't show up if I'm here." "What do you mean, not a flesh and blood person?" I asked. Christine was my girlfriend. She took her life here at 99. "Okay." He pointed across the road. "She called me from that payphone before she did it. I tried to call her back, but it was too late." So I would have been talking to you from 1999 had I answered that phone? I'm just trying to make sense of this. She wanted me to talk to you? The ranger shook his head. No. She wanted you to follow her. I'm not tracking this. I come up here at 5:45 to prevent guys like you from answering that phone. I don't know who's on the other end, but there have been witnesses saying that people who answer that phone jump into the gorge moments later. Is that what all the memorial plaques are for here on all these tables? The ranger nodded. There have been 9 deaths since Christine's, and they say at least 4 of those people answered that phone. You're saying she's trying to make people take their own lives? I don't think it's her. That's not her spirit. She wasn't vindictive, angry at the world. Then something else is drawing people here and convincing them to jump into the gorge? I guess the only way to know for sure is to answer the phone. Good luck answering your next unknown caller.
Scary story time, haunted state edition, while I make glittery, beady, clear slime, or at least try. Number 1 on this list has to be Georgia. It was one of the haunted states that I've ever visited. Get your money's worth and let it drain. Oh my gosh, it's been forever. I'm not playing. First time I ever visited Georgia, it was really, really creepy. Like, the energy was off, and it wasn't even like Atlanta, Georgia. It was like Douglasville. I was gonna start off with stories you guys knew, but I'm not gonna do that. So this was before I started seeing the supernatural really heavily. I was on the phone, I was in the car with my mother when we started to pull out of the driveway, and I was looking in the rearview mirror when I seen somebody who was white that was walking up the cul-de-sac. Before I even asked my mom who that was, I had looked back again because we had fully pulled out and I didn't see nobody going around the car. So now immediately I'm freaking confused because I know I just seen somebody who was about maybe like 5'6" walking around the car, and now that person has completely disappeared, and we're in the middle of the street and there's no way he could have went, because like the houses we were on, like there's a yard before you get to the house. Like there's no way he could have disappeared. First thing I do is I look at my mom. I say, did you just see that man over there? And she goes, what man? And she starts looking with me, and I say, you didn't see him? She was like, nope, that means you just seen, like, you just seen something. I just seen something. Why are we making this? What? I just seen what? And who did I see? When I tell y'all, I'm not even lying, like this man vanished in thin air. Being in Georgia, like a lot of unexplained things happened like this, like a lot of unexplained things. Maybe it was just the house, but I'm telling you, Georgia as a whole felt very like depressing. Another story that I don't have any recollection telling you guys is when we were in this said house, and basically the people whose house it was, their loved one had died in the house, and so whenever they would fight and argue, lights would turn on and off. And I remember this one time we were all like in the living room, and out of nowhere the lights turned off, and my mom immediately said, well, that's her telling you to calm down. That's her telling you to stop. The lights literally turned on and off. Like, y'all, I'm ditching the freaking fork and I'm going in with my hands. I feel like this is the prettiest slime I've ever made. I'm not gonna lie. We would drive past wooded areas in Georgia. I swear I would see people in different time clothing just roaming around the woods. And it freaked me out a lot because Georgia has a lot of depressing history. To this day in Georgia, Marietta, you have black people being unalived and strung up. Even before I was babysitting and I would go into the woods behind the house, I swear I would see people back there, and it's literally the woods. It's actually woods. Like it was like miles long of wooded area. And y'all, it's just I get goosebumps every single time I talk about Georgia, especially that house, because there was so much negative energy happening in that house, negative stuff happening every single day, and people would just act like it didn't happen. I remember one time I was walking out of the kitchen when I seen something black walking up the stairs, and I literally just went to my room and didn't come out after that, because what do I even make of that? Like, what am I supposed to do after that? And this slime, I just got a pistachio seed stuck. Oh, this is like a lychee seed. I keep seeds. I'm sorry. But I remember, y'all, like, that house was just so haunted. And again, like I said, it wasn't just one area of Georgia. It felt like Georgia as a whole. Lake Lanier, like, I'm happy I never visited there, because, y'all, I literally love this slime so much. That's rare for her to say she loved this slime. That was, like, so perfect. Okay, I have to stop.
In 1974, the Appalachian Trail would experience its very first documented unaliving. This man's name was Joel Eugene Poison, and the woman that he was with would witness his unaliving. She came face to face with the killer, yet he didn't unalive her as well. But instead, he made her go with him. Arguably worse. So Joel Poulsen was 26 years old in the spring of 1974. He was from South Carolina, and he was basically like an outdoorsman. He loved photography. He loved to take pictures of nature. For him, photography wasn't just some like random little side hobby for him. People actually knew him for his photography work. Like I said, he was the avid like outdoorsman. He would take pictures of landscapes and flowers and liminal spaces of the outside world. You know what I mean? Like things like that. The picturesque, beautiful nature. And then one day Joel woke up and he was like, I want to do something big. I want to do something crazy. I want to do something adventurous. And he decided that day that he was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. Also around that time, he became friends with this young college student named Margaret. And Margaret was basically the opposite of an experienced backpacker, if you know what I mean. Like, this girl wouldn't be able to tell a stump from a rock. But Joel had done some convincing and had ultimately convinced her to join him for part of the adventure. So in 1974, they headed off into the mountains of northern Georgia and began their journey. Eventually, they reached this shelter called the Low Gap Shelter. And when they arrived there, there was already a man there, which normally on the Appalachian Trail, like, that's fine. Those shelters are put in place for everybody to use on the trail. So this man introduced himself simply as Ralph. And initially, Margaret didn't really notice anything like strange or unsettling about this man. He did look rough, like, not gonna lie there. He did look pretty rough. Margaret also noticed that he didn't carry very much equipment with him, but didn't really think too much of it. I mean, this is the Appalachian Trail and you can meet very strange people out there. But you can also meet very nice people out there. I've been on the Appalachian Trail many a time. So whatever, Margaret just thinks like, okay, whatever, meeting strangers is part of this experience, right? So we're gonna be fine. Like, you know, we're just gonna respect our sides of this little cabin and do our thing, so whatever. Except Joel noticed something that Margaret didn't. So he ended up pulling Margaret kind of like off away from the little cabin area, away from where Ralph couldn't hear them, where he quietly told her, I don't trust this guy. You know, Ralph did not look like a hiker. He wasn't even wearing the proper shoes. He wasn't even carrying any kind of equipment that would help him along this journey. So basically Joel was just kind of worried, like, what if like he wants to steal our equipment? You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel comfortable staying in this area with this guy. He's gonna potentially steal from us. I don't really know how I feel about this. Basically, they hurried back because all of their stuff was still there with Ralph at that moment. But Ralph hadn't done anything. He was still just sitting there. And Joel was kind of starting to wonder, like, maybe I'm like judging this guy a little bit too unfairly right now. You know, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. So they ended up making dinner. They even offered Ralph some, which he declined. Ralph ended up going off to get some firewood, and then they just pretty much existed around the darkness of the campsite and the little flame of the fire for hours, all night basically. Nothing bad happened, but Joel was still very uncomfortable. He had like a spidey sense that something was weird. So he and Margaret made a plan that they were gonna wake up super early in the morning and pack up everything super early and get the F out of there. They weren't even gonna eat breakfast there. They were gonna just take off like a mile or two away from where Ralph was because they were just that uncomfortable with him. Honestly, that bothers me so much because he knew something was wrong. And he knew that he had to do something about it, but he didn't realize how little time he would have to solve this problem. The morning came and Joel wakes up and he wakes up Margaret and he's like, okay, we got to get going. We have this plan. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Set this into motion, girl. Let's go. He was basically all ready. Margaret gets up. She's like getting all of her stuff together, which, you know, should only take a few minutes. Joel walked over to the stream, splashed his face with some water, waked himself up a little bit, you know, and then he walked back over to the shelter. Margaret was putting on her boots when all of a sudden she heard a loud crack. It was a gunshot. She looked up and she saw Joel collapse near the ring of the fire. And there was Ralph standing there holding a revolver. Margaret was shocked. She didn't know what to do. It was like fight, flight, fawn. I don't know. She honestly didn't even have time to register what she had just seen before Ralph rushed her. He ordered her to roll over and then he tied her hands behind her back. Just imagine the speed at which her entire reality changed. Just think about that for a second though. Minutes earlier, you're just thinking about what you're gonna have for breakfast. You're thinking about your little plan of escape. You're thinking about how this man is making you feel uncomfortable enough to go make this escape. And then your worst fears come true right before your very eyes. It's too much for me to bear. Little heart would give out. Ralph forced Margaret into the woods where he tied her to a tree and blindfolded her. Margaret kept asking Ralph over and over and over again, is Joel dead? Is Joel dead? And Ralph actually said no. He said no, Joel was only injured. And then she begged and pleaded with him to move his body away from where the fire was so that he wouldn't get burned if he was still alive. Ralph told her that he would, and then he left her alone. She sat tied to that tree for what felt like hours until eventually she heard footsteps walking back towards her. Ralph removed her blindfold and then ended up walking her back to the shelter where she noticed that Joel was gone. Margaret asked where Joel was and he just said, I got rid of him. And that's when Margaret really fully understood that Joel was dead. She was expecting that she was going to be next, but Ralph didn't kill her. Instead, he started rummaging through Joel's belongings. He was looking for money in particular. Joel had some traveler's checks in there, which Ralph took. And then after not finding anything else in Joel's things, he ordered Margaret to pack all of the rest of her things and then took her off into the woods, deeper into the woods. This is where Ralph starts tying her feet and her arms together. Margaret just kept thinking, this is it. This is my time. This is my time. And she kept asking him, are you going to kill me? Are you going to kill me? Are you going to kill me? She tried reasoning with him, giving him any reason, just saying, there's no reason to kill me. You're not going to gain anything from killing me. She begged and she pleaded and she cried and she just said, there's no reason that you should be doing this. I didn't do anything to you. And he just looks her dead in the eyes and says, well, neither did Joel. But then instead of killing her, actually, Ralph just prepared her to survive. He hid her backpack beneath the leaves, gave her something to eat, took one of Joel's belongings, filled it with water, and then positioned it in a spot where Margaret would be able to reach it. She's still bound and tied up to this tree, right? And then he told her that eventually somebody would come and find her. And then he took off. And he didn't even run away or anything. He just casually walked away. So she's waiting and waiting and waiting, and about 15 minutes go by, and then she starts to hear the sound of footsteps walking back towards her, and she realizes that it's Ralph, and she's like, oh my god, he changed his mind, he's gonna come kill me now. But basically, she's just sitting there mentally preparing herself to die. I can't imagine that kind of fear. But Ralph actually returned to Margaret to say, hey, like, I actually am not gonna leave you here because, like, that I don't want you to just die out here. And that's when he admitted truly why he had killed Joel. According to Margaret's account, she said that Ralph hadn't actually wanted to kill Joel. He just wanted his equipment. Like Joel had originally been suspecting, like, he was uncomfortable. He felt like he was just eyeballing his equipment. He realized that this man didn't have his own equipment. But Joel was a pretty large man, so Ralph kind of felt like he was not going to be able to match with him. And so he made the decision to do what he did. But then he gives Margaret a choice, whether or not she wants to stay tied up in the woods, obviously that's a no, or to walk with him out of the woods. And obviously she chooses to walk with him out of the woods. He claimed once they reached the highway, he was going to let her go. Ralph walked behind her the entire way with a gun pointed directly at her, and she was told not to say anything to anybody or signal that she was in trouble if she were to see anybody along this trek. She wasn't allowed to say anything to anybody, because if she did, she would get a bullet to the back. But as they're walking, they end up coming across these two men with chainsaws, which Margaret actually recognized. She and Joel had actually encountered these men the previous day, which meant that there was a very good chance that these men were going to notice something incredibly important, that yesterday she was with Joel, and now today she's with this man. And that Joel is no longer there. Joel's gone. Where did Joel go? The forester did recognize her, and he was like, hey, didn't I just see you yesterday? But knowing what Margaret knows, she is not able to say anything to him. She can't even mouth the words help. So eventually the men just continued on, and so did Margaret and Ralph. Once again, Ralph ended up changing the plan, and he was no longer going to drop her off at the highway, or like let her go at the highway. Wanted more time. They hitchhiked, and a young woman actually did end up picking them up. They eventually reached the tourist town of Helen, Georgia, where Ralph gets a hotel for them both. He signed them in as Mr. and Mrs. Joel Polson, the man he had just murdered. And once they got to their motel room, sat down and started practicing Joel's signature. And then in the morning, unbelievably so, he lets Margaret go for real. Ralph ended up heading down to Atlanta, and Margaret went back to North Carolina or somewhere like that, where she eventually did go to the police. Fucking insane.
Whenever someone passed in my village, we could hear loud drums playing from the graveyard. Today, I found out why. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy. I grew up in a very rural village. As far back as I can remember, we'd occasionally hear loud drums being played from the graveyard at night. My parents never let me see what happened there. They would say it was none of our business. When I was 14, I moved to the city to pursue higher education and eventually settled there. My parents moved in with me as well. During holidays, they sometimes went back to visit my grandparents, but I never went with them. What's the point of leaving the comfort of the city life to visit a village in the middle of nowhere? But this year, my mother convinced me to go back because my grandparents wanted to see me. I couldn't say no to her. The village sits on the edge of the Thar Desert. On the way there, we passed a large graveyard. Seeing it after so many years brought back memories of those distant drum beats from my childhood. I didn't mention it. I spent the entire day with my grandparents, but stayed in that isolated village surrounded by people I barely remembered, and it was becoming too much for me. There wasn't even any internet connection. I planned to leave the next morning, but the heat during the day was unbearable. Riding my motorcycle that far in the middle of the afternoon would have been miserable, so I decided to wait until evening when the temperature finally began to drop. I left just before sunset. Night fell quickly. The rocky dirt road was completely empty. There was no streetlights, houses, or passing vehicles. My motorcycle's headlight was the only thing cutting through the darkness, illuminating perhaps 20 or 30 feet of road ahead. Beyond that was nothing but blackness. I was beginning to wonder if leaving that late had been a mistake. Then I reached the graveyard. I noticed several faint lights in the distance and slowed down. I stopped my bike beside the graveyard wall. Then I remembered the drums from my childhood. After all these years, I finally had the chance to find out what they were. Curiosity got the better of me. I left my motorcycle against the wall and climbed over it. The graveyard was mostly deserted. Dry, twisted trees stood here and there between the graves, their branches rattling softly in the night wind. In the middle stood a small temple. A crowd had gathered around it. Several people were carrying torches, while others were arranging firewood in an empty space in front of the temple. I ducked behind a dried tree trunk and watched. There was a body wrapped in white cloth. Several men stood nearby, and a few others had large drums hanging from their necks. Each held a pair of drumsticks. Beside the body stood a middle-aged woman dressed in white. What caught my attention was the girl standing beside her. She was wearing a red dress. The clothing seemed completely out of place at a funeral. She was trembling, clutching the woman's hand, and repeatedly looking between her and the body. At first, everything seemed like an ordinary funeral. Then the body was set alight. That's when everything changed. Two men seized the girl and pulled her away from the woman. She immediately began crying and struggling as they dragged her towards the flames. The woman stood still with a blank look on her face. I stood there, frozen in fear. The girl was forced toward the fire, while the people around her simply stood and watched. Her cries became louder, desperate, and pitiful. Then they began to play the drums. The purpose was very clear. It was to drown out her screams. The loud drums, mixed with blood-curdling screams, shook me to my core. I could do nothing but watch as her body slowly stopped moving. Nobody in that crowd bat an eye while witnessing this horrifying and inhumane scene. The beating became faster and louder until it seemed to fill the entire graveyard. The crowd remained completely silent beneath it, watching as though this were an ordinary part of the ceremony. Nobody tried to stop them. No one even looked shocked. It was as if they had done this before, as if they had been doing it for years. My legs felt weak. I wanted to run, but for several seconds I couldn't move. I could only stare at the flames and listen to those terrible drums. Then the smell reached me, the smell of smoke, burning wood, and something else I couldn't bring myself to identify, the smell of a burning body. That finally broke through whatever had frozen me in place. I turned and ran. I nearly fell climbing back over the wall. I reached my motorcycle, started the engine, and accelerated down the dirt road without looking back. After that, everything became a blur. The only thing I could hear was the drums. Even the motorcycle engine roaring beneath me, I could still hear them in my head. I didn't stop until I finally saw the lights of the city. When I reached my apartment, I was shaking so badly that I struggled to get the key into the lock. The first thing I did after getting inside was contact the police. I told them everything I'd seen and gave them the exact location of the village and the graveyard. I don't know if they've taken any action yet. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. Whenever I close my eyes, I see those flames again. I can't sleep. And the worst part is knowing I stood there and did nothing while that poor girl was being burnt alive. I don't know how long this has been happening. I don't know how many people have been a part of it. But one thing is certain, I am never going back there, and I'll never forget the sound of those damn drums. That really shook me. Let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to share, just send me a DM.
Hey guys, I'm almost done with my makeup, but I think I should give a story time on working at Brandy Melville. Okay, this is like pretty crazy, and it's gonna be pretty long because a lot has happened to me while I worked there. I worked at the one in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was definitely something else. All I have to say for the girls themselves are they're all super duper duper sweet people. All the keys and sales are the sweetest humans ever. And if you ever think they're being mean, I promise you we're done with our day. Like you get pretty sick of it after you're in there for 5 minutes. Okay, so pretty much I started working there around Halloween, and this is the first thing that happened to me that I should have just left. Like, it was a really big red flag and definitely a crazy situation. So pretty much, I got somebody to cover the second part of my shift on Halloween so I could go to my little cousin's, or to my aunt and uncle's Halloween thing. And so after work, I needed to change into a dress. And two of my coworkers were like, we will come down with you, zip up your dress, like, help you change. I was like, perfect. That, like, works perfectly for me because I'm, like, in a rush. I think I'm late, I'm like, shit, I need to, like, get ready. Okay, so I'm, like, almost done with my shift, and the girls come up to me, and they're like, hey, is it okay if this key, which is, like, in between a manager and a sales, comes with? And I was like, yeah, she knows I'm changing, right? And they're like, yeah. Like, okay, perfect. Like, that works. Also, I'm not one that's very, like, caring about people seeing their body, if that makes sense. So, I'm like, whatever, yeah, that works. So we go down, we tell her again that I'm changing, and I am a minor at this time, so, and she's not. And I'm like, okay, well, we're changing, just, like, heads up. So I proceed to change very quickly, because I think I'm very late to this Halloween party, and then I go on my day. Okay, I come into work the next day, and my manager brings me outside, because whenever they want to, like, yell at a girl, or, like, talk to you, they bring you outside of Brandy next to, like, the PF Chang's. And they're like, you are, like, this isn't funny, this is really bad, this is really, disgusting, like, you're so lucky she didn't press charges, she could have pressed charges, this, that, and third. And I was like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? It turns out that girl that they asked could come along, later, the, like, key, came back upstairs after I had left and said that I had sexually harassed her and that I, like, pretty much she had two different stories. So the first story was that I asked her to go downstairs alone, in that we went downstairs alone and I just flipped up my shirt. The second story was that I was driving through the parking garage and just flipped up my shirt. But what happened was, when I was downstairs changing, we were facing there's 3 girls and me. We were all facing away from each other, and I changed obviously very fast because I thought I was late, facing away from each other, and it was in a parking garage that nobody was in. I was like, this is just crazy that you're telling me that she could have pressed charges. Okay, another thing that happened was I wanted to go to Newport for the 4th, which I was, 18? Like, freshly 18. I'm gonna be I'm a senior in high school. Of course I'm gonna want to go to Newport for the 4th. So I have doctor's notes for Newport for the 4th, and they're real, very, very much so. Like, I paid my $15 for that. So I had doctor's notes for both days, and this girl snitched me out and said that I was in California on the 4th. And so when I came back, I got a write-up, which is very illegal, I'm pretty sure. And in the state of Arizona, you don't even need a doctor's note to, have to call out. Which at Brandy, they made it a mandatory thing. And you also couldn't leave if you were sick. If you were throwing up in the bathroom, you couldn't leave. They wanted you to stay. But pretty much I got a write-up, even though I had a real doctor's note and they said it was fake. But let me know if you guys want more story times, because I have literally another thing where they try to call the cops on me. I have so many story times. So let me know if you guys want more story times. Okay, I'm ready and I'm about to go to class, but I want to reinforce that this is no hate to any of the girls that I worked with. I'm so lucky to have worked with all of them. They're all such great and amazing humans. It is only hate on my managers, so. Also, I'm not just a bratty girl that worked there for a month and something happened to them. I worked there for 11 months, and all of my stories are backed up by multiple girls. These are not just me being one-sided stories and I was actually in the wrong. Everything is backed up by multiple people.
Want to play something scary? No room. Have you ever played the Shadow Walk? No? Me neither. Want to play it? To begin this game, you need a long, unlit pathway, alley, or sidewalk. This game also states you need to be near or under a I can't speak. This game states you also need to be near or under a street lamp, which is why this game is said to be played outside, at night, in an area with ideally no traffic and no real people around. This is one of the games that is intended to be played alone. The lone player should stand with their back facing the street lamp, so that a shadow is cast down the pathway in front of him. Oh, that is fully charged. I literally charged that before I started recording. What? I literally charged this. Okay, I don't really want to do this with this little light. I mean, that doesn't look good. Now, walk slowly down the path and only keep your eyes focused on your shadow in front of you. Your shadow is going to mimic you like it always does, but as you continue to walk, you will notice that your shadow has delays, or even another shadow will come into view. If you see either of these things, you need to immediately turn around and sprint back to your starting street lamp without looking behind you. This game sort of seems like a psychological horror because I feel like if it's late at night and you're tired and it's dark and you're walking further and further away from the light source, your shadow will probably get fainter and it'll be easier for your eyes to play tricks on you, but I don't know. So although I am not brave enough to play this game, who knows? Maybe you are. Good luck.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of the overprotective mother that bewitched his son and the girlfriend so that the girlfriend doesn't leave the son. So for context, this boy was a mama's boy, right? He was the only child to his mother, and he met this girl and they started dating, and this boy loved this girl so much, and the mom, I think, could not understand why this boy suddenly loves another woman besides her, right? The boy makes money, he works a nice job, he takes care of his mom, takes care of the girlfriend, but the mom wanted him all to herself. So the girlfriend and the guy are dating, whatever, but things are weird in the relationship, right? The girlfriend is like, I started having weird dreams where this boy was cheating on me. They had been together at this point for like 1 year. She starts having dreams that this boy is cheating on her. She starts having dreams of this boy sleeping with other girls. It was just sad, you know. She confronted him. They started fighting over it. The guy's like, how am I cheating? How can you dream of me cheating? And then when I tell you to, like, at least maybe check my phone, check my socials, do this, do that, you can't prove that I'm doing it, but because of a dream you say you believe it. And the guy was like, if you want to leave. They broke up, right? And then as they broke up, the guy was like, you know what, went back to his girlfriend, right? Because the mother, the guy's mother was like, yeah, I don't go back to that girl, I never liked her anyway, she was this, she was that. But the guy obviously loved the girl, and then they got back together because the mom was going to traditional healers trying to ruin the relationship. And then when they broke up, she didn't feel the need to go back to the traditional healers anymore. They got back together, but they got back together in secret because the guy now realized that, okay, my mom doesn't like this lady. As soon as the mom found out that these two are back together, she started to concoct her things again. Now she's making the boy like not give the girl attention. Now every single time the boy goes to work, she wants to give him lunch. You know, she wants to give him a lunch box, right? Every single time the guy goes to work, the mom gives him money for lunch. It's either she gives him money for lunch or she gives him a lunch box every single day. Like, she made no mistake. Her son was the type of person that makes money, right? Had a car, whatever, but you could tell that he could afford to get a house and a car at the same time. But he refused to leave that woman's yard. Another unfortunate thing that happened was the girl got pregnant, and during her pregnancy, things were just happening. She was getting complications on complications. She would go to the hospital, come out. Like, it was not a nice pregnancy. 6 months into the pregnancy, the mom invited them for lunch, and she was like, listen, I want you guys to feel better or whatever. So I just want to make you guys feel happy. Go to the spa. And then they came back. After they came back, they ate. And then I think 2 weeks after that, baby girl got a miscarriage. She lost her child. And then after she lost the child, the mother-in-law, right, well, they were not married, but the boy's mom was making life difficult for her. Like, the boy's mom showed her that I don't like you, right? Like, she would make her suffer. She would be like, yeah, you have a rotten womb, like you deserve what happened to you, like you're not a good person for my son, we're not even sure if that was my son's child, like she would say all of these things to her when she would visit the boy and sleep over, and then the guy would go to work and leave her at home, and then the mom would be saying all of these things, and like, this is why I don't like her. But then she wasn't really saying it to her, she was saying it on the phone with somebody else, as if she's not in the room. Whole time this girl is in the kitchen, the woman is in the sitting room, and they can hear each other. And then the girl would cry and tell the boy, and then the boy would obviously believe the mom, you know. And then they eventually decided to move out. She finally got him to move out because she was like, it's either we leave or I'm not staying in this relationship. They moved out, got an apartment. When they got an apartment, everything was fine. The problem started when this boy went to go see his mom, and he would eat her food. And then they would come back and they would start fighting. It would get better, and then they would not see the mom for like a long time, and then he would go back, and the cycle continued. Until one day she got pregnant again, right? She fell pregnant again, and then she was like, you know what, this time I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for my child. I'm going to make sure that this one survives, because she knew that the mother-in-law was doing something, but she couldn't prove it, right? Fine. Decided to go to this particular traditional healer. When she got to that traditional healer, the traditional healer was like, listen, I'm going to give you something for you to bath with for 7 days. After that 7 days, you are going to find out the truth by yourself. I'm not going to tell you what exactly is happening, but you are going to find out the truth by yourself. She was like, but my husband's like, don't worry, your husband is also going to find out the truth. Why not just do this for 7 days? Just gave her one thing, and that was it. Fine, she did as the guy told her, whatever, and then she bathed with the stuff, and then 7 days hit, nothing happened. On the 8th day, the husband was like, listen, I want us to go somewhere, I want to go see someone, because I feel like, you know, something in me is telling me for us to go and see somebody, right? And then the husband was like, okay, sharp, let's. Oh, and then the girl, why am I saying the husband, the boyfriend, sorry. And then the girlfriend was like, no, okay, let's go see somebody, you know, maybe protect a baby and stuff like that. They went to a prophet, right? When they got to this prophet, the prophet told them everything, didn't hide anything. It was like, listen, there's a woman in your guys' life, the woman is related to you, and this woman is working overtime to ruin your relationship. If you don't protect yourself from this woman, as much as you love this woman and she's dear to you, you know exactly who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to mention any names. And the prophet was like, you need to make sure that you stay away from this person, because this person wants you to herself. She basically lost your father. Her father, obviously, the boy did not grow up with his father. The father left, whatever. And the boy looks like the dad. Now you can already imagine. The boy looks like the dad, and she wants to hold you dear to her because you remind her of your father, right? And this person doesn't want you to leave because she just wants to feel like he's still there, he's still in your life, because she loved him so much. And since he left, she has never gotten over that, right? And the prophet was like, as for the first pregnancy, she was told, because she attends traditional healers, that traditional healer told her that if that child survives and lives, that the son is going to leave, right? But he wasn't really saying it like this, but they kind of got who he was talking about, who the prophet was talking about. And they were like, if that child survived, you are going to forget about her and you are going to start loving her more and ever. And she's blocking you from leaving she blocked you from leaving the house because she didn't want people to make you see things for how they are. She's the one that's been making you guys fight. She's this, she's that. You need to stay away from that woman. Like, there's nothing that I see. Her heart is dark. There's nothing so the prophet was like, there's nothing that I see that could literally make her happy unless your father comes back. And your father is never going to do that. He doesn't want anything to do with her. He doesn't want anything to do with you because of how your mother is. Your mom loves, well, he didn't say your mom. I hope you get it. Your mom loves traditional healers, bruh. She's a witch. She's a witch. She believes in witchcraft like nobody's business. And so the guy was like, I'm leaving. And the guy did try, and the father did try to take the son. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful because he didn't have much and he had to go back to his villages or whatever. And the mom won custody of the son, and that was it. So the guy was like, you know what, go look for your father, man. Talk to your dad. If you want to find your dad, go look for your dad, talk to your dad, and your dad will give you all the information that you need. It's not that he left, it's because of circumstance. So fine, the prophet gives them things to go and bath with. They tala, things start to get better. Baby girl is no longer now stressed or whatever, she's more calm. Guys, the way this prophet helped them, I think after a certain while, they were looking for the father, and then the father actually called the son. Like, hey, I heard that you were looking for me. This is my address. You guys can come. I live in I live in this village. You guys can come. They got there, and the man told them that your mom is a witch. Your mom is the one that was making me suffer. And every single time I tried to get back into your guys' lives and get back into your lives, specifically not her, she would make me suffer. I would lose my job. I would have to find myself like seeking mercy from her to basically stay with her and everything. She's kind of like, no, I can't. He was like, your mom is a witch. You need to stay away from that woman. I understand she's your mom, but you need to love her from a distance. When you go to her, you need to go to her protected. That's what the father said. And then he eventually decided to like miraculously take out a lobola, which is dowry, for the girl. They got married and the mom wasn't there. On the wedding day, there was heavy rains, and it was because the mother is still doing things. Like, even when they knew that she was a witch and she was just doing these bad things, she still continued. And she continues this till this date.
In rural southern Illinois, a toy company started selling an incredibly realistic doll to expectant mothers. But after some of the women gave birth, the dolls started crying. Welcome to the Midnight Sesh. We have had some flavors. Now let's get into the story. At first, the mothers thought it was just part of the toy. It would cry, and the instructions said to rock it gently to calm it down. And sometimes that worked, but eventually it didn't. The crying would continue, so the mothers would shake the doll harder and harder until eventually the only way to make it stop was to hurt it. The more it cried, the harder they had to hit it. And eventually, some mothers discovered the only thing that would make the doll completely silent was destroying whatever mechanism was inside its head. They would smash the doll against the wall again and again until it stopped moving, until it stopped crying, until it was completely silent. But then something strange started happening. Neighbors began calling the police. They reported hearing babies screaming from inside the houses. Then came the sounds of screaming, followed by repeated banging against the walls. When police arrived at one of the homes, they expected to find an abused infant. Instead, they found something much worse. There were bloody remains smeared across the walls and floor. Pieces of whatever appeared to be a baby were scattered throughout the room. And in the middle of it all sat the mother, rocking something in her arms. When the officers asked where her baby was, she looked completely confused. She didn't understand why they were there. She just looked down at the bundle in her arms and said, "I got rid of the stupid doll." The police looked at what she was holding, and that's when they realized the mothers hadn't been destroying the toy. They had been destroying their babies. Holy fucking shit. This one got a little too dark. I'm sorry. Fucking plot twist. Did not see that one coming. Let me know your thoughts down below. Go ahead and, if you want. I love you as always. Bye.
Tonight's ghost story sent a chill up my spine. I can't imagine this happening, and it's horrendous. It's called It Got Back Into Bed, and it's been sent to us by Ellie, so a massive thank you, Ellie. She shared 2 stories with us. This is the first one. She says, "Hi Becky, I've just stumbled across your page and I love it. Thank you, Ellie. I have a few brief stories that you might like. When I was 13, we moved into a small terraced house at the top of a little street with our local church at the bottom. I hated that house. It felt off from the moment we moved in, but my mum loved it, so we stayed." She says there were so many instances of things happening, times when you just know you're being watched, followed around the house, and hearing strange noises. You know those feelings you get when you're walking into a room or upstairs and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, so you end up taking the rest of the stairs at a run. Totally know that feeling. A few years after moving in, my mum went away for the weekend, so my friend, who was a year older than me, stayed over. She says we'd been out the night before and had far too much to drink. We were both lying in bed nursing our sore heads when my friend had to get up to go to her Saturday job. She looked like death warmed up. Ellie says we had a good laugh about how hard her day was going to be, feeling that rough. Off she went to work, leaving me in bed, feeling lucky that it wasn't me. She says I rolled over, got comfortable, and decided to try and get some more sleep. Before I'd even finished the thought, I heard the front door shut downstairs. I laughed to myself, thinking she hadn't even made it to the end of the road before deciding she was too rough to go to work. I had my back to the bedroom door and was facing the wall. I heard her come back upstairs. I heard the bedroom door open. I heard her walk into the room. I stayed there, where I was pretending to be asleep. Don't ask me why, with a crying laughing face she's put here. Then I heard the bed springs. I knew she'd climbed back into bed. Ready to shout surprise and make her jump, I spun round. The bed was empty. The bedroom door was shut. She had never come back. I beg your finest pardon, Ellie, because what the actual hell happened here? I would never step foot in that house ever again, ever. But Ellie actually has got another story for us. I will share that very shortly. If you've got a creepy tale, picture, video, something supernatural that you can't explain, please email me, thedarklingchronicles25@gmail.com. Send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. I would love to hear from you. I'll catch you next time for some more ghost tea.
Creepy caller, stalker, fucker situation is getting on my last nerve. Now this is one step too far. Now you're messing with the kids. Okay, show yourself. Come, please. I'm losing the fucking will to live. I have just had a phone call from social services to say that I abuse my kids. But that's not the scary bit. I mean, it is, but the scary bit is they have described to the social services something that is at the side of my neighbour's house, just so that it gets back to me that they know where I live. They made a point on their anonymous referral, in capitals and highlighted by this worker who called me, to mention the thing that was at the side of the neighbour's house. I'll just say it, it's a couch. But to mention something so random is just purely, it's poking the bear, isn't it? They've come, they've done the checks have come back. I wouldn't have posted this otherwise. It's all sorted, but it's looking more and more like that person who I thought it was. She even started the phone call off with, "We know malicious calls can sometimes happen, so we're not saying that this is fact. We just need to ask you a few questions." So she already knew from the nonsense that had been reported that it was possible malicious, but she obviously had to check because... Yeah, oh, that's another thing. They mentioned one of my cars that my boyfriend drives my car. He doesn't. He couldn't drive it if I paid him to. He wouldn't know how to drive, not even an automatic. He's never so much as drove a go-kart. But again, just saying, knowing that because it's children concerned, they have to get in touch. Whoever it is has mentioned those two things to scare me. The one thing she asked, did I need any help with anything? She's going to contact the police, liaise with the police and put a TA something on the house. Like an agent something. So if they do show themselves in any way, just fucked up this, you know, it really is. Weird little fuckers, mate. Weird little... Luckily the girl was lovely, but I said you should not even be able to make malicious social services referrals. I understand that sometimes anonymous referrals and stuff need to be made. I get that completely. Hence why I said, come out right now, come and do your checks, unannounced, come right now. I gave her permission to phone me GP, all of that shit, and the checks came back within a couple of hours. But the point is, people should have to give full names and come into the office with ID if they want to make anonymous referrals. It should be kept anonymous, but they should have to provide identification so then when it comes back malicious that they can be charged with it, because you shouldn't have to be able to weaponise services that, I hope you're happy, never mind me, you might hate me for whatever reason, you think I'm a government spy, whatever. Yeah, this is why me and this person a few years back fell out, because they thought I was sent from the government to spy on them. Don't even ask, it was crazy. But you've wasted resources. Someone could have needed that visit today.
Bro, what's going on around?
Did you know the average person is conscious for approximately 16 hours a day, which means for 8 hours every single night, you are completely unconscious in a space you cannot monitor, in a body you cannot control, doing things you would never remember. Here's what most people never think about. Sleep paralysis episodes occur in approximately 8% of the general population. During an episode, the person is conscious but completely unable to move, unable to speak, often unable to scream. They experience the full sensory environment of their room. They can see, they can feel, they can hear everything happening around them, and they cannot respond to any of it. Now here's a detail that most people stop reading before they reach. The episodes are most common when something has disturbed their sleep environment. An unfamiliar sound, a change in temperature, a presence in the room. Researchers at Penn State found that in a significant percentage of documented sleep paralysis cases, the person reported sensing a presence before the episode began, not during, before. Here's the part that sticks with people. Sleep paralysis does not create the feeling of presence. It may be triggered by it, which means the figure standing in the corner of your room during an episode may not have been a hallucination. Did you know wolves have been documented modifying their behavior based on the observation of human routines? Researchers in Yellowstone recorded wolf packs that changed their hunting pattern, not in response to prey behavior, but in response to human patrol schedules. They learned when the rangers came, when the rangers left, and they adjusted accordingly. Here's most people never think about. If an animal with a brain a fraction of the size of a human can observe a routine and plan around it, then the implication for human predators is something most people are not comfortable sitting with. A person who has decided to enter your home has the same observational capacity as the wolves. They watch, they learn, they identify the gaps in the pattern. The night the second car is not there, the hour the last car goes off, the window in the routine where nobody is watching. The wolves in Yellowstone were documented doing this over periods of weeks before they acted. Here's the part that stays with people. The wolves did not attack when the rangers were present. They waited, and whatever has been watching your home from a distance has been doing the same exact thing. Learning the gaps, waiting for the one night everything aligns, and you will not know which night that is until it actually already is the night.